The story begins with an image of Kaito, a third-year university student, walking home. In front of him is a group of friends chatting with each other. Kaito thinks to himself that the guy ahead seems really happy being surrounded by so many girls. If he had joined a club, maybe things would have been better. But Kaito had already passed his high school years. Even if he wanted to go back, there was nothing he could do now. So those boring days would stretch on forever because he didn't have anything special. While lost in his thoughts, a light suddenly appeared at Kaito's feet. A magic circle emerged, and the four of them were transported to another dimension. A girl welcomed them, but then they realized there were four people, so it seemed like there had been a misunderstanding. A moment later, Duchess Lilia of this kingdom appeared and apologized for their accidental summoning. She explained that she was responsible for this summoning and promised, on the honor of her family, to ensure their safety. At that moment, Hina panicked and asked why Naga wasn't there, while Aoi asked what was going to happen to them. Kaito realized that Naga was the guy with glasses who had been summoned with them earlier. Lilia explained that because Naga was considered a hero, he would receive special treatment. She acknowledged that they seemed confused by the situation, but reassured them that they wouldn't be in any danger. Kaito thought to himself that if Naga was being called a hero, didn't that mean they would have to fight monsters and the Demon King? At this point, Lilia began talking about their future, explaining that the three of them would be arranged to live in the palace and explore the country, and after a year, they would return home. Everyone was surprised that they could really go back to their world. Kaito asked if Naga was the hero, did that mean there was a Demon King, and would he have to go deal with him? Lilia looked a bit puzzled. She explained that while a Demon King did exist, he had been killed by the ancestral hero, and the current relationship between the demon race and humanity was very good. Cultural exchanges were common, and any issues with monsters were handled by the Night Order. Kaito then asked why they even needed to summon a hero in the first place. Lilia explained that 100 years ago, after the Demon King's death, the ancestral hero became the bridge of reconciliation between the demon race and humanity. To honor the memory of that time, every 10 years, a grand festival would be held, and one person from the world of the ancestral hero would be brought over to play the main role. This person was called the hero. At this point, they realized they had been caught up in a hero summoning, but this world didn't seem to have any real dangers. Suddenly, a maid spilled tea on Kaito's sleeve and tried to wipe it off. Lilia immediately accused her of doing it on purpose and demanded an apology. Kaito was about to say it was fine, but Lilia explained that men were normally forbidden from entering this place, and Kaito was the first man ever invited here. Lilia assured them that, since they had been brought here, she would make sure to provide for them, and if anything bothered them, they should report to her right away. The three were a bit taken aback. Perhaps life in this other world wouldn't be too bad after all. Later, they strolled through the streets. The maid mentioned that she would go prepare clothes for Kaito, as there were no men's outfits in the mansion. As they walked, Kaito saw a child with horns run by. The maid explained that the child had demon blood. Kaito realized that the child was a half-demon, meaning there were many races living together in this world. This was one of the achievements of the ancestral hero. The maid proudly said that the life they had now was thanks to the efforts of the ancestral hero 100 years ago, at a time when humanity had not even known about the existence of other races. The demon realm had known, but chose not to interfere. Prior to that, the demon race and the god race had been at war. But in reality, the god race was only supervising the other races. However, the Demon King triggered the war between the two realms. Kaito asked if that Demon King was one of the 6 kings. The maid quickly replied that of course, he wasn't. He was just a weak rebel. Nonetheless, he was only a low-ranking demon. And for humanity, victory was quite easy. The maid went on to explain that the situation back then was complicated, and the other Demon Kings couldn't intervene because it would have affected both realms. That's why there needed to be a human who could defeat the Demon King and become the bridge between the two races. That person was the hero summoned from another world. The hero had to endure many difficulties in a chaotic human realm, saving countless lives and gathering comrades, before engaging in a fierce battle to defeat the Demon King. After that event, humanity became aware of the existence of the demon realm and established the peace treaty. Kaito thought everything sounded amazing. The maid said that all of this was thanks to the efforts of the ancestral hero, Hikari. Kaito suddenly thought that Hikari might be a girl. He then asked what had happened to the hero. The maid said that no one knew for sure. She was still lost in the excitement of telling the story when Kato and she accidentally got separated. Kato felt somewhat fine since he was in a place where he could easily observe his surroundings, but he was still a bit worried about the current situation. Suddenly, a girl approached and asked if he needed any help. She asked if he was someone from another world. Kato didn't understand how she could know, but then the girl said that his magic power was just like the heroes. Kato unconsciously asked if he truly had magic power, and she confirmed, saying that Kato really did speak his mind. She liked children like that. The girl introduced herself as Kuro and gave Kato a pastry, even though they had just met. After learning that Kato had been separated from his companions, she handed him a gift and told him that if he thought of his friends, the gift would help him reunite with them. After Kuro left, Kaito thought to himself that the demon race was truly wonderful. When Kaito returned to the mansion, he reflected on how so many things had happened that day. After bathing and preparing to go back to his room, Aola came and asked if she could talk to him. She asked why Kaito seemed so calm after being dragged into this world so suddenly and thrust into such an absurd situation. After thinking for a moment, Kaito said that at first, he had been a bit worried. But then he realized that no matter what world they were in, humans would die someday, and they couldn't fight against that fact. On the other side, Lilia was thinking about the demon Kaito had encountered. She suspected that perhaps they were aiming for otherworldly technology. After Aola left, Kaito continued to think about his future over the next year. He had never been particularly ambitious, but as he was deep in thought, Kuro suddenly appeared, climbing in through his balcony. She told him that if he ever found himself in trouble, she would be there to help. Kuro said she liked kids like Kaito, who, even though they didn't have any specific goals or dreams, should still try to find them. She said it would be a waste not to try, and encouraged him to go on a treasure hunt. Then, Kuro smiled, picked Kaito up, and flew him into the sky. She mentioned that someone once told her similar words, that even if you don't have a dream and feel empty inside, you should still try to discover what you truly desire. Kuro would teach Kaito how to broaden his horizons and search for the treasures hidden in this peaceful world, where Kaito himself was the protagonist. Kaito remembered when he turned 12 years old. His parents had passed away in a tragic accident. He had been in the car with them, but had only suffered a minor neck injury. At the time, he had thought he was lucky. Kaito felt like life was like two sides of a coin, with both good and bad sides, and he believed that was just the way things were. He thought the happier one was, the more misfortune would follow. He used to wonder what the point of having dreams or hopes was. Friends or lovers would only cause more fear of future events, leading to even more suffering. However, someone had once told him to open his arms wide and seek out the treasures in his heart, not to be afraid. As long as he had faith and aspiration, things could be different. Kaito woke up suddenly from this strange dream and realized he had just experienced something unusual. He noticed a note that said, "I'll drop by again later," leaving him to wonder if it had all been real or not. He quickly came to accept that he had been swept into a hero summoning from another world for the purpose of participating in the Hero Festival. After getting dressed, Kaito met with Lilia. She apologized for the incident that had occurred the previous day and explained that the maid had been truly remorseful and wished for an opportunity to make amends. Lilia also emphasized that she understood it would be difficult to forgive such a mistake right away, but she asked Kaito to give the maid a bit of time. Kaito responded that having a man from another world appear in this place might make anyone feel strange and uneasy at first, so it was just a misunderstanding and nothing worth making too big a deal out of. At that moment, Aoi and Hina arrived, and Aoi apologized for asking strange questions the previous day. That morning, they shared a rare type of bread available in this world because it was the first day of the new year. Hina then asked about the objects in the room, wondering if they were all products of magic. Lilia explained that yes, those were magical items enchanted with spells, which could be activated simply by touch. She pointed out that these items were very common in everyday life. Hina continued to ask if people couldn't use magic directly, and Lilia explained that most magic required specialized knowledge. To use magic proficiently, a person would have to go through a process of training. She demonstrated this by creating a small whirlwind, showing that magic requires focus and time. Lilia stressed that learning magic wasn't easy, and everyone progresses at their own pace. Lilia also mentioned that while anyone could learn magic, the key was knowing how to control and manage it. Kaito recalled that Kuro had said something similar about magic. There were various types of magic, and even attribute-less magic existed. Some basic spells could be combined to create more complex ones. According to Lilia, it usually takes an average person around 2 years to master basic magic, but with hard work, anyone could learn it. Lilia then offered to provide them with a reference book if they wanted to begin learning. Ollie asked if there was a way to learn magic that would help them understand languages, and Lilia replied that she believed there was. She explained that people from other worlds summoned here automatically understood the language of the summoners, so there wasn't a need for translation magic. Kato realized that, somehow, he could understand and read the notes that Kuro had left behind. Hina was excited to learn that she could study magic, but Aoi reminded her that learning magic wasn't that simple. Afterward, Lilia gave them a few basic magic books and promised to send them a private tutor. She also advised them to read through the books she provided before starting. Kato noticed that he could actually read the books and found them quite interesting. However, he also thought that spending a year learning magic would require a lot of effort and time. He wished that someone could teach him. And at that moment, he suddenly thought of Kuro, who seemed very knowledgeable about magic. But he figured no one would want to waste their time on him. While Kaito was lost in thought, Kuro unexpectedly appeared and jumped straight onto his bed. Kaito asked where she had come from, but Kuro didn't answer and instead asked if he needed help learning magic. Kaito replied that he didn't necessarily want to learn, but it would be nice to know how to use magic. He recalled Kuro's earlier words and decided to express his desire to learn magic, asking her to take him on as her student. Kuro smiled, praised him for his humility, and agreed, simply because she also wanted to help him. Regarding magic, Kuro was very confident in her knowledge. In the demon realm, Kuro was deeply respected by everyone. In another conversation within the demon realm, someone asked where Kuro was, and another person replied that she had just left. They also discussed how Kuro hadn't attended the party and were particularly interested in the new hero who had appeared, but one Kuro seemed to favor. They even mentioned that Kuro had asked for the blessing of the mirror shard for Kaito. Back with Kaito, he was beginning to feel magic surrounding his body, as if he were submerged in water. Kuro told him to remember this sensation because it was very important and was the foundation of magic knowledge. Kaito asked which of the basic elements was the most advantageous. Kuro explained that there were only 2 types of magic: untransformed, which retains the original properties of the object, and transformed, which changes the object into elements like water or fire. Kaito began to understand more clearly and realized that magic wasn't necessarily divided into 8 types as he had thought. Kuro continued to explain that magic was originally taught to humans by the demon tribe, broken down into different parts to train mages. Learning magic would take time, but mastering advanced techniques required a solid grasp of basic theory. Kuro encouraged Kaito to keep trying and promised to always support him. A little while later, Lilia announced that the palace would be holding a New Year's banquet, and they had received invitations. Upon reading the letter, Lilia noticed that the sender had only invited Hina and Aoi, completely forgetting about Kaito. She became furious and apologized to Kaito for leaving him behind at the mansion. Her anger flared, and Kaito had to calm her down. Lilia explained that it was just a misunderstanding, and that her anger was merely an illusion. But Luna, her maid, revealed that Lilia had once been the captain of the strongest knight squad and was a legendary warrior. Kaito wasn't particularly interested in the banquet. Kuro laughed, saying that the king hadn't invited Kaito, which she found amusing. Kaito admitted that he didn't want to attend such a formal event anyway. Kuro then suggested they could have a barbecue party instead, with only Kaito and a few of her friends attending. Kaito thought the idea wasn't bad at all. When the day of the barbecue arrived, Kaito was quite surprised to see that the person sent to pick him up was dressed very formally and arrived in a luxurious carriage. He recalled Lilia's surprised expression when she read the invitation to Kuro's party. Unexpectedly, Kuro had even prepared casual clothes for him, which made Kaito start to suspect Kuro's true identity. Eventually, when the carriage stopped by the riverside, the guide directed Kaito to walk along the riverbank to the meeting spot. Upon arriving, Kaito didn't see Kuro or her friends anywhere. Suddenly, Kuro called his name from a distance, and next to her stood a group of beings from various races. Kaito was startled to realize that these people were not ordinary at all. Standing before him was a suit of armor, a tiny girl, a giant, a skeleton, and a girl with a cold demeanor. Kuro began introducing everyone. The cold girl was Ain, her maid. The skeleton was Zekas, whose special trait was being extremely wealthy. Next was the spirit Lazria, the giant Ahado, and the suit of armor named Noin. After that, they all enjoyed a joyful meal together. Ahado invited Kato to go for a walk, telling him not to just stand there in silence. When Kato was about to say that he wanted to help with the barbecue, Ain quickly prepared everything at lightning speed, leaving Kato astonished. Ahado reassured him that he'd get used to it soon. He whispered to Kato that even though Ain looked young, she had been serving as Kuro's maid since before Zekas and Lazria were even born. In terms of power, only Kuro could surpass Ain. Ahado shared with Kato that it must have been tough for him to move to such a strange place, but now he had Kuro's family, so he could relax. Kato was curious about the concept of family and asked Ahado if everyone here was from the same race, since they all looked so different. Ahado explained that this was not normal, but rather unusual. He himself was a special case from the ogre race. Typically, ogres have green or red skin and only one horn, but he had blue skin and 2 horns, a rare occurrence that only happens once in hundreds of years. Ahado continued to talk about his rebellious youth when he had planned to leave and cause chaos everywhere. However, when he faced death, he realized that his actions were pointless and held no value. By chance, he met Kuro and saw her power, thinking he would die. But Kuro wasn't hostile. On the contrary, she offered him food, like an old friend. That was the first time Ahado had ever experienced such a warm smile. Ahado added that Kuro held a very high rank and possessed unimaginable power. Yet she never treated them as inferiors. Instead, she always referred to them as family, as brothers and sisters, with genuine affection. Even though they were from different races, they truly loved and respected Kuro. Ahado told Kato not to think of himself as an outsider, because as Kuro's friend, they would consider him their friend too. Kato gradually realized that compared to his original world, in this place, he had truly found good friends. A little while later, Noin approached him and asked if he was enjoying himself. Kato nodded in agreement. Noin then removed her mask, revealing the face of a young woman. She smiled and asked if Kato could tell her about Japan nowadays. Kato was surprised to hear her mention his homeland. Noin revealed that long ago, she too had been summoned to this world, but she had declined the opportunity to return and instead asked Kuro to help her become part of the demon tribe. Noin said that if Kuro considered Kato a friend, then she guessed he was similar to her. She wasn't sure if she still felt the emptiness she once did, but thanks to Kuro, she had found the true treasure of her life here. Noin smiled and told Kato that he could find that treasure too, whether he missed his old world or not, but he should still enjoy life here. A little while later, Kaito went over to where Kuro was sitting. She told him that the time had come. Suddenly, a bright light filled the area. Before them, a radiant tree of light shone brilliantly. Kuro explained that this was the Tree of Light, which absorbed magic from the air and illuminated once a month. She wanted to show Kaito this, which was why she had organized the barbecue party here. Kaito was deeply moved. He thanked Kuro for taking care of him ever since he arrived in this world. Kuro smiled and told him not to be so formal. Then, with a playful smile, she gently pushed Kaito down and rested his head on her lap, asking if he was happy. Kaito responded that it had been a long time since he had felt this happy. Kuro continued to ask if he felt comfortable, knowing that he must have been exhausted after being transported to such a strange world. She reassured him to relax and trust her, encouraging him to sleep. Under Kuro's gentle care, Kaito slowly drifted off to sleep. He realized that it had been a long time since he had felt this loved and cared for. Memories of the last time he had experienced this feeling came rushing back. Times when he had always been afraid and crushed his own courage. But now, he felt that everything would be okay. Before falling into a deep sleep, Kaito hoped that he would find his true treasure in this place. Kuro watched him, smiling warmly. When Kaito woke up the next morning, they began cleaning up. As they were leaving, Noin handed Kaito a gift, which was a magic box. It was like a portable warehouse. Noin explained that it would help him store whatever items he wanted. With this in hand, he only needed to sense the item, and he could retrieve it. Kaito wasn't sure if he should accept such a valuable gift, but the bond between them made him feel at ease about it. In reality, for Noin, it was made from leftover materials. Kuro thought that she wanted to make something even better for Kaito. Kaito thanked them, realizing that this was indeed a treasure. Noin mentioned that they gave it to him for convenience, allowing him to carry things easily. The best part was that items could be stored in this space for a long time without deteriorating. Finally, she said that this was just a welcoming gift and directed Kaido towards Ain. There, he saw a gigantic table filled with rice balls and pickled radishes. Kaido was shocked by the sheer quantity and wondered how they managed to make so much. No one explained that, after all, she had once been Japanese, and a meal without rice just wouldn't feel complete. These dishes were made by all of them together. Lazria grew the rice, and the cooking was done by Ain. Lazria mentioned that it was her first time learning how to grow rice, and Ain proudly stated that if her skills were inferior to any chef in this world, she couldn't call herself Kuro's maid. Kaido smiled, saying that thanks to them, he could enjoy some home-style food, and he thanked everyone for their friendship. Afterward, they bid each other farewell, promising to meet again. Ahado mentioned that his friends would surely want to meet Kaido too. Zekas would arrange for Kaido to visit their mansion. They told him to take care of himself. Kuro said goodbye, adding that she would drop by again. Kaido asked Kuro why it had to be her, and when Kuro looked puzzled, Kaido simply said it was nothing and wished her a good night. In the distant future, Kuro could foresee that Kaido would soar high with beautiful wings. She thought to herself that one day, Kaido's wings would grow large enough to help him fly freely in the sky. When Kaido returned home, the others had already returned. Lilia asked how the party went. Kaido replied that it was wonderful. Lilia said she had been a bit worried at first and asked if he could share a bit of what happened with them. After hearing Kaido's story, Lilia was surprised that the others were also from another world, though that was extremely rare. She mentioned that she had once heard rumors of a hero who had decided to stay in this world forever, but the idea of that person being reincarnated as a demon was rather strange. In fact, she wasn't entirely sure, because that hero had lived for over 100 years. If it was possible to change one's age and appearance, then the demon Kaido had met was probably at the level of a count or perhaps even a high-ranking duke. Kaido asked if that was part of the ranking system within the demon tribe. Lilia explained that while the demon realm didn't officially have a ranking system or hierarchy, for easier understanding, powerful demon lords were usually categorized into ranks. If it were a demon duke, then the one who met Kaido would have strength comparable to a nation, or perhaps even the gods, not someone that just anyone could meet at will. Kaido questioned that if someone with such power existed, surely their reputation would be widespread. Yet no one here seemed to know of them. How was that possible? Lilia explained that most high-ranking demons used a kind of magic that suppressed recognition. People couldn't find any information about them unless the demon themselves allowed it. In the story Kaido just told, names like Ain, Ahado, and Lazria could be heard, but other names and details of the conversation remained unclear. Lilia provided an example, stating that even if she and Luna mentioned the names of the 6 demon lords, Kaido might not even recognize or hear those names. Almost no one dared to use recognition-suppressing magic because it required an immense amount of mana to sustain continuously. Lilia then continued by talking about the 6 demon lords, including the War King, the Earth King, and the Ancient Dragon King. She emphasized that this was an incredibly rare skill and advised Kaido to treasure the relationship he currently had. Kaido realized that despite his bond with Kuro, he still didn't truly know who she was. Afterward, Kaido mentioned that he had brought back a gift from the party and wanted to share it with them. When the 2 girls saw the rice balls in front of them, their eyes lit up with excitement. Kaido commented that he had eaten so much that he probably wouldn't need to eat again until noon the next day. While listening to their conversation, Kaido asked why Hina always called him Senpai. Hina explained that he was actually a former student of the school she currently attended, and that was 3 years ago. At first, Hina wasn't sure, but his personality reminded her a lot of the person her older brother used to talk about, so she had her suspicions. Kaido suddenly remembered and asked if Hina's brother was the class president. Hina confirmed this. Her brother had mentioned that Kaido never paid attention in class and was always sleeping during lessons. Kaido was surprised to realize this connection from his past. He had always thought his time at school was wasted, but he never imagined he had made an impression on anyone. Kaido said that if he ever got the chance to visit the school again, he would send some words to Hina's brother. Kaido then asked how the banquet at the palace had gone. The 2 girls said that it was very tense. Kaido asked if Naga was doing okay, but both girls were visibly angry, especially Hina. She said that Naga had openly looked down on them, and she regretted not giving him a piece of her mind before leaving. Kato asked if the three of them weren't childhood friends. Hina denied it, explaining that they had only gone to the same school since they were young. Unexpectedly, both Kaido and Aoi said at the same time that everyone dreams of embarking on adventures with their childhood friends. They spoke in unison, surprising both of them. After that, Aoi continuously asked Kaido strange questions, and he tried his best to answer them to her satisfaction. The conversation continued to flow lively. Elsewhere, someone was reading Kuro's letter about the blessing she had given to Kaido, and they were deeply impressed by him. The next day, they arrived at the temple for a blessing. Kaido wondered what exactly a blessing was. Lilia explained that it was simply a form of divine protection, similar to having a charm. This place was prone to sickness and disease, and while the priest's blessings in the form of charms had their effect, a blessing from the gods was certainly stronger and more assured. They entered the sacred place, and Lilia couldn't understand why it was so crowded today. Kato asked if it wasn't normally this busy, to which Lilia replied that only nobles would come to receive blessings in this main shrine. Luma then chimed in, saying that she knew the reason. There was a rumor that the goddess would be visiting. Kato was then separated from the group and changed into a different outfit. A priest instructed him to step outside to proceed with the ceremony. As the doors opened, the space inside suddenly transformed. Kaito found himself standing in the middle of a vast garden. The sky above was a clear blue, and it didn't resemble a room at all anymore. A voice echoed, welcoming him, addressing him as the one favored by Kuro and the human from another world. Before Kaito stood a goddess, Shiro, a beautiful girl with white hair. She mentioned that Kuro had asked her to bring Kaito here to express gratitude for traveling from such a distant world. Shiro granted him a blessing. Afterwards, they sat down together and drank tea. Kaito was confused as to why he had gotten caught up in this situation. Shiro mentioned that Kuro had asked her to bestow a blessing upon him, and she had done just that. She also added that his friends were still performing the ceremony, so Kaito should relax and enjoy the tea. Kaito was startled to realize that Shiro could read his thoughts. Casually, she mentioned adding some cookies to go with the tea, and then conjured up a plate of cookies. Kaito tried one, finding the taste unusual, and asked Shiro if the cookies were good. Shiro jokingly responded that they were awful, and that she'd rather eat dirt. Before Shiro could say anything else odd, Kaito asked about the blessing she had bestowed upon him. Shiro replied that she didn't know, as this was the first time she had ever granted a blessing. Kaito then asked Shiro about her role or position, to which she modestly replied that it wasn't anything significant. She quickly changed the subject, asking Kaito about the dreams of humans. Shiro believed that if humans desired supreme power, she could grant Kaito anything: boundless power, knowledge that encompassed the entire universe, or treasures that would never run dry. She continued in a calm voice, stating that she could bestow upon Kaito everything, even transforming him into a god, if only he would tell her what he wished for. Kaito became a bit alarmed as he realized the infinite power Shiro was offering, feeling as though he could hold everything in his hands. After a moment of hesitation, Kaito timidly said that he didn't leave anything and thanked her for her kindness. Shiro questioned why Kaito would refuse. He explained that what he truly desired wasn't something that could be achieved through a simple wish. Before arriving here, he had been someone without a clear purpose. But someone had reminded him that if he could become a little braver and face every challenge, he would eventually find his own path. Kaito understood that happiness didn't come from power, wealth, or treasure, but from discovering his true purpose. He believed that one day he would claim his own treasure. Hearing these words, Shiro smiled. She admitted that at first, she had only reluctantly agreed to Kuro's request, but now she found herself more intrigued. Shiro said that what she had just done was merely mimicking what other gods did when bestowing blessings, and it wasn't really anything significant. Kaito started to feel as though he might have upset Shiro, but she continued, stating that from now on, things would get more serious. Shiro declared that she would bestow upon Kaito a prayer in the name of the one who holds dominion over life and death, the one who governs all things. She granted Kaito a true blessing, that the earth would shield his body, the sea would protect his soul, and the sky would be the wings that lift him up. She affirmed that Kaito would become a miracle, illuminated by the celestial beings. Shiro then moved closer, cradled Kaito's face, and bestowed upon him all the blessings of the world, tied to her title in this realm, the title of the Creator. After completing the ceremony, Shiro mentioned that his friends had also finished their own rites. Kato didn't feel any different after Shiro's words and ceremony, but he still politely excused himself, complimenting her on the truly delicious tea and thanking her for the enjoyable meeting. Shiro, with her calm demeanor, handed Kato a bottle of tea and told him that he was welcome to come by any time if he wanted to have tea with her again. Kato responded that he would be happy to, but hoped that next time she would choose a pastry that she personally found tasty. Afterward, Kaito stepped out of the room, leaving Shiro smiling as she watched him go. She understood why Kuro had chosen Kaito. He resembled her not in personality, but in spirit. Upon leaving the room, Kaito reunited with the girl. Hina immediately noticed what he was holding and curiously asked what it was. With a composed expression, Kaito replied that it was a box of tea gifted to him by the goddess during their meeting. Lilia overheard this, visibly surprised, and asked in astonishment how he could receive such favor from the goddess on their first meeting. Kaito further explained that everything was quite simple. He had just sat and had tea with the goddess for a short while and chatted with her a bit. However, Lilia found it hard to believe that things could be so straightforward. She continued, saying that not only had Kaito received a blessing, but he had also been invited to have tea with the goddess, something unprecedented in this world. She emphasized that no one in history had ever been granted such an honor. Lilia went on to explain to Kaito that interacting with the gods was proof that he had gained the trust of the divine realm, especially from the goddess Shiro. This meant that he had received special attention from the gods. For the nobility, even a conversation with the divine was a sign of immense power and noble status. At this moment, the group of people around them also began to take notice and listen to their conversation. Kaito hadn't expected that simply talking to a goddess could become such a monumental event. He felt quite confused by the situation, not understanding why everything had unfolded in this way. At that moment, a man in the crowd called out Lilia's name. It was Count Dukas. With an expression full of arrogance and disdain, he approached Kaito's group, his eyes especially drawn to the girls from the other world. With a contemptuous tone, he spat out words of disbelief, expressing his doubts about the origins and presence of these girls. Faced with the tense arrival of Count Dukas, Kaito stepped forward and introduced himself as someone also from the other world. However, Kaito's words did not please Count Dukas. The Count, angry that someone dared to interrupt him, displayed further disdain, dismissing Kaito as nothing more than an insignificant carriage driver. He then excused himself, claiming he had urgent matters to attend to, and left in a hurry, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. After Count Dukas left, Lilia sighed and explained to Kaito that the man was notorious for his lecherous behavior and power-hungry attitude. She added that even at the banquet the night before, Count Dukas had behaved inappropriately. Aoi and Hina, feeling grateful for Kaito's timely intervention, couldn't stop expressing their thanks. Luna, the maid, also spoke up, saying that only people like Count Dukas would dare approach noble ladies with such condescending attitudes. Suddenly, a strong voice rang out from afar, announcing that the goddess of time was about to arrive. Lilia heard this and couldn't believe her ears. She remembered hearing rumors just a few days ago about the possibility of a visit from the goddess of time, but she hadn't expected it to be true. Lilia quickly warned everyone to stand behind her and follow her lead. Everyone swiftly complied. The goddess of time appeared, a beautiful girl with long black hair, radiating power and authority. She gracefully moved through the crowd, her sharp gaze fixed directly on Kaito. The entire crowd bowed their heads in reverence as she passed, but the goddess seemed to only have eyes for Kaito and his group. The goddess approached Lilia and asked if she was a noble of this country. Then, turning to Kaito, she asked if he was Lilia's servant. Lilia, feeling flustered, didn't know how to respond in the presence of the powerful goddess. The goddess of time continued, studying Kaito closely, and remarked that he had been blessed with a peculiar fate. She noted that even she couldn't fully perceive this fate, suggesting it might fall within the domain of the goddess of fate. However, she sensed a special force emanating from Kaito, a power that even the goddess of time couldn't completely comprehend. She emphasized that she wasn't sure what demon had set their sights on Kaito from the very first moment, but that it intrigued her. The goddess of time then told Lilia that she had uncovered something interesting. Though she wished to discuss the matter further, she mentioned that there was much work still awaiting her, and proposed that they meet again another time. Lilia, overjoyed, quickly replied that she would be ready anytime the goddess desired. Before departing, the goddess bestowed upon Lilia a blessing of time as a parting gift. She promised to remember their names and bade them farewell before slowly fading from sight. After the goddess left, the crowd began to surge toward them. Luna, the maid, hurriedly urged everyone to board the carriage before the situation became too chaotic. The group quickly climbed into the carriage and left the crowded area. Upon returning to their room, Kato was surprised to find Kuro already waiting for him. She immediately asked if he had met Shiro that day. Kato nodded in confirmation and recounted the entire story of his encounter with the goddess Shiro. After hearing it all, Kuro found it highly amusing. She said that she had never seen Shiro act in such a manner before. Kuro emphasized that not everyone easily garnered Shiro's attention, even when asked. She told Kato that he should feel proud for achieving such a feat, as Shiro had never shown favoritism to anyone before. Because of this, Kuro concluded that the situation was truly strange. She explained that while everyone had their own preferences and aversions, Shiro was entirely different. Kuro used the example that, to Shiro, there was no distinction between good or bad, delicious or bland. Every type of flower, every cloud in the sky had the same value in her eyes. For Shiro, everything in the world held the same significance, with nothing being superior or inferior. Shiro was regarded as a supreme being, but the fact that Kaito had caught her attention indicated that he was truly special. Kaito felt confused and didn't understand why everything was escalating in this way. Kuro affirmed that he had accomplished something remarkable today, but that wasn't what she was concerned about. Kuro hugged Kaito tightly, and in that moment, Kaito began to reflect on what he truly desired. When Kaito finally mustered the courage to express it, Kuro was overjoyed and embraced him even tighter. At that moment, Kaito realized how gentle Kuro truly was. With just a few words, all the worries in his heart seemed to vanish, replaced by a warm feeling that flooded through him. After that, the two of them continued training in magic together. Kuro mentioned that, at this rate, Kaito would be able to cast magic within just 3 days. She also revealed that there was a big surprise in store for him. Kuro handed Kaito a book, smiling as she told him that after the banquet, she had made it. It was a beginner's guide to magic, written in a detailed and easy-to-understand manner specifically for Kaito. As he opened the book, Kaito noticed that everything was very clear and easy to grasp, allowing him to make rapid progress. While thinking about it, Kaito hesitantly asked if it would be possible to share the book with other people from different worlds. He worried that if he did, he would need to inform Lilia that Kuro was teaching him, especially since Kuro seemed to be hiding her identity by using someone else's name in the invitation. At this point, Kuro didn't say anything for a moment, looking slightly irritated, but then she smiled and told Kaito that she had already prepared several more copies because she knew he would ask. Kaito wondered why Kuro was trying to conceal her identity, but Kuro insisted that she wasn't. She had no reason to hide anything. Kaito then asked why she used a recognition suppressant. Kuro explained that, being quite famous in the human world, she was often bothered by others, so she didn't want to attract attention. Kaito then inquired why she didn't use her real name in the invitation. Kuro explained that using a pseudonym in the invitation made things easier to explain if anyone asked, but she admitted that this was a misunderstanding, and she had nothing to hide. Kuro apologized to Kaito and said she would make corrections. She then wrote a new letter and asked Kaito to deliver it to the owner of the house. The next day, Lilia received the letter and felt more at ease. It seemed that the person who had read the letter treated Kaito more kindly afterwards. Lilia was deep in thought for a moment, and Luna, the maid, curiously asked what the letter said. Lilia handed the letter to Luna and warned her to brace herself, telling her not to be shocked. After reading it, Luna also became alarmed. Lilia stood up and announced to everyone that there was an emergency. That afternoon, they would be receiving a very important guest, and no mistakes could be made. Tomorrow, this mansion would welcome the Lord of the Underworld, the ruler of the Netherworld, Kuro. Kaito was utterly shocked, never imagining that someone like Kuro could hold such a monumental position. In ancient times, a monster had emerged from the void, resembling invisible empty smoke. Despite possessing terrifying power, it was a being without purpose, always searching for a physical form and meaning in life. This monster had experienced all the bitterness of the world, yet still couldn't find an answer, gradually coming to believe that the world was filled with nothing but filth. Kaito panicked as he thought about Kuro. He wondered just how powerful Kuro truly was, as he had never imagined that she was one of the 6 kings of the Netherworld. Meanwhile, everyone in Lilia's mansion felt an immense sense of urgency, as the situation was far more serious than they had anticipated. At the scheduled time, Kuro appeared at the mansion's gates with thousands of soldiers marching behind her. Kaido noticed that the atmosphere suddenly became heavy, and Kuro's demeanor was entirely different from her usual self. Seeing the crowd in front of her, Kuro apologized to Lilia for the sudden visit. Lilia formally responded that this place always welcomed Kuro. As they entered, Kaido realized that Kuro seemed like an entirely different person, the aura around her feeling as though it was about to swallow him whole. Suddenly, Kuro flashed a cheerful smile at Kaido and asked if he liked her in such formal attire. Instantly, Kuro's cold and distant image crumbled, and the atmosphere returned to normal. Kuro was still the familiar friend she had always been. Kuro sat down and invited Kaido to sit next to her. Kaido asked if Kuro was really a lord. Kuro just smiled and said that she had never formally introduced herself, but people naturally called her by name. Kaido laughed, realizing that the cool persona didn't quite suit Kuro. Luna brought tea to Kuro, and Kuro recognized Luna, recalling that they had met 10 years ago. Kuro asked if Luna's mother was Luna Maria. Luna was surprised that Kuro still remembered that detail. Kuro patted Luna's head, expressing how happy she was to see her again, making Luna feel deeply satisfied. Afterward, Kuro became more familiar with everyone in the room. She apologized for having snuck into the mansion before without notifying them. Lilia, blushing with embarrassment, said it wasn't a problem at all. Then, the tea and snacks were served. When Kuro looked at the plate of pastries before her, there was a moment of reluctance, as if she regretted having to eat them. Suddenly, Luna announced that there was an issue from the royal palace. Kuro's expression immediately darkened, and an aura of bloodlust filled the room. Lilia explained that the king wanted a private audience with Kuro. Kuro, with a menacing look, apologized and then asked if it was the person who had failed to invite Kaido. Lilia caught her meaning and instructed Luna to return the letter formally. Kaido was surprised at how everyone suddenly became so sinister. To ease the tension, he mentioned that he had bought some cakes that he thought Kuro would like. Instantly, Kuro's mood brightened and the atmosphere in the room became relaxed again. As everyone enjoyed the lovely surroundings, Kuro suddenly asked if they could let a dragon out to play. Lilia hesitated, saying that might be a bit too much. Kuro just laughed, assuring her that she was only joking. Then she summoned a small dragon, and they all played together joyfully. At the end of the playtime, Kuro said that she had a wonderful time and thanked Lilia, Aoi, and Hina for making it such a memorable day. Kuro then remembered that there was something she wanted to ask Lilia, almost having forgotten. She inquired if Lilia could help watch over the human realm while she was busy tidying things up. Kaido, confused by what was happening, looked puzzled, but Kuro just smiled and told him not to worry about it. The monster born from the underworld, despite knowing that the world was full of impurities and imperfection, had begun to change. It was no longer a meaningless entity, but gradually realized that this world also had beautiful things. It created for itself a form, a heart, proof of its existence. That monster was Kuro, who had chosen a new path, filled with love for the world. Seeing Kuro happily interacting with others, Kaido couldn't help but feel surprised. He had once thought that Kuro could hardly live in harmony with others, but he had been wrong. Although he felt a little lonely, wondering if he was special in Kuro's eyes, she suddenly turned around and softly whispered her thanks for his presence that day. Kuro admitted that not having many opportunities to talk with Kaido made her feel a bit lonely, so next time, they would hang out alone. Those words made Kaido blush, wondering how Kuro could so easily understand his feelings. Aoi laughed, saying that she had always imagined the Lord of the Underworld would be terrifying, but Kuro was unexpectedly gentle. Lilia added that among the kings of the world, Kuro, the ruler of the underworld, was the kindest. Meanwhile, the Dragon King, the Emperor of Souls, the King of War, and the Lord of Death were all terrifying in their own ways. The conversation about the kings intrigued Lilia, especially as she was preparing to have a discussion with the Goddess of Time. But just as Lilia began to daydream, Luna suddenly handed her a pile of documents. These were papers from the royal palace, the workshop, and several other places, along with tasks for the next day. All of a sudden, Lilia felt overwhelmed by the amount of work awaiting her. Today, Kaido was standing in the town, waiting for Kuro. When Kuro arrived, she smiled and asked if he had been waiting long, then naturally took his hand. Since the last time Kuro left, Kaido had always had a strange feeling whenever he looked up at the sky, as if it was about to rain. He couldn't understand why he had that feeling. Kuro suddenly remarked that Kaito was releasing a tremendous amount of magical energy. Surprised, Kaito asked when Kuro had arrived and what she meant by magical energy. Kuro explained that she had always sensed this energy in him, but today it was clearer than ever before. This proved that Kaito already had a foundation for using magic, and in just 2 more days, he would be able to control it better. Hearing Kuro's words, Kaito began to realize that he could indeed sense magical energy, and it became very clear to him. Kuro suggested they go outside to practice controlling it, but Kaito said they couldn't because it was about to rain. Just then, the rain suddenly poured down, surprising Kuro. She asked Kaito how he had known about the weather in advance. Kaito, confused, replied that he didn't know. It was just a sudden feeling that popped into his head. Kuro found this fascinating, explaining that people who grew up in different environments often developed specialized magic. She added that many heroes, after being summoned to this world, never returned to their original world, and each had their own unique abilities. Kuro continued, saying that Kaito seemed to have a special potential, perhaps due to the blessing from the goddess Shiro, and she wanted to test it a little. Kaito agreed, and immediately, his body stiffened. Kuro's magic seemed to lock his entire body, and she asked him to try moving. It felt as though his body was encased in cement, and all his efforts were in vain. However, seeing Kuro's serious gaze, Kaito summoned all his strength, trying to move even a little. He thought Kuro had loosened her hold, but just then, she suddenly released a powerful killing intent, which terrified Kaito and caused him to fall to the ground. Kuro immediately rushed to him, hugging him tightly and anxiously asking if he was okay. Kaito assured her that he just needed to rest for a moment. Kuro apologized, explaining that she had added killing intent to trigger Kaito's latent power. But thanks to that, they had discovered that Kaito did indeed have a special ability, possibly related to precognition or weather control. Kuro told Kaito that he was extremely sensitive to the magic around him, able to detect even the faintest emotional shifts. Kaito asked if there was such a thing as emotions in magic, and Kuro explained that mood and emotion played a significant role in the use of magic. The force of a spell would be greater if the caster had hostile feelings toward their opponent, and conversely, it would be gentler if there was affection. Kaito was surprised and asked if his power might be related to some form of perceptive cognition. Kuro replied that it might go beyond simple perception. A normal person wouldn't be able to easily speak with Shiro, but Kaito could. Even when Shiro cast a powerful spell, Kaito was able to move and had even adapted to the magic. Kuro suggested that this might be the power of empathy. At this point, Kaito looked quite exhausted, and Kuro gently laid him down on her lap. She asked if he was free tomorrow, since she had previously mentioned that they would go out together. Kaito slowly realized that this would be his first ever date, and what's more, his first date since coming to this world. Kuro led Kaito into a small restaurant, and the owner seemed to recognize her. Kuro was curious as to why the place wasn't as busy as usual, and the owner explained that everyone was dealing with a swarm of flying dragons. The knights had been dispatched to eliminate them. Kaito thought to himself that no matter how terrifying the swarm of dragons might be, Kuro wouldn't have any trouble handling them. However, Kuro remarked that she couldn't intervene because every nation had to solve its own problems, especially since humans and demons were now considered equals. After the meal, as Kuro was about to pay, Kaito quickly stepped in and took care of the bill. They continued strolling around the town, and Kaito asked if it was okay for her to be walking around like this. Kuro replied that she had used magic to suppress recognition, so to others, she would appear as just an ordinary child unless someone interacted directly with her. This made Kaito realize that, in the eyes of everyone else, he probably just looked like he was walking hand in hand with a little girl around the city. They walked past several shops selling unique items, and Kuro spotted a teleportation device. The shopkeeper introduced it, explaining that with the right coordinates, it could transport someone instantly. He offered to sell it at a discounted price of 30,000. Kuro intervened, stopping Kaito, and explained that the stone in the device only had a purity of 30%, far from worth the price. The shopkeeper realized who Kuro was and quickly apologized. Kaito felt grateful to Kuro for preventing him from being scammed, and Kuro remarked that she couldn't forgive people who tried to pass off fake goods. Kaito was surprised to realize that Kuro could determine the stone's clarity just by looking at it. Kuro simply laughed and explained that she was speaking in general terms, but the purer a stone was, the darker it would appear. She advised that when buying stones, One should choose the darker ones as they are of the highest quality. Kato looked at the necklace Kuro had given him and noticed that it was completely black, indicating that it was of very high quality. Suddenly, Kaito sensed something approaching, and as Kuro turned around, they saw a group of flying dragons appearing before them. Kaito didn't understand why the flying dragons were here when the knights had already set off to subdue them. He wondered if the knights had failed in their mission. Kuro reassured him that this wasn't the case. There were only 7 dragons, not enough to form a large swarm, and these were likely stragglers flying faster than the punitive force. Kuro realized something odd and questioned why the dragons appeared so panicked. She suggested they might be fleeing from something, and it wasn't necessarily the punitive force. Kaito wondered what could be more terrifying than the knights, and just then, one of the dragons prepared to attack him. Kuro did something that paralyzed the entire group of dragons in midair. She reminded Kaito that she had once said she wouldn't join the fight, but that didn't stop her from eliminating anything that posed a threat to him. Changing the subject, Kuro asked Kaito what books he planned to buy. Kaito replied that he sometimes stopped by the bookstore to read a bit. Kuro recommended a book about the first hero, telling him that it was quite an interesting story. Kuro remarked that many people said the first hero was a great person, but Kaito was curious about what he was really like. Kuro responded that Kaito had already met that hero, though Kaito still didn't understand what she meant. At that moment, Ain appeared and informed them that the king had sent a message thanking Kuro for helping to eliminate the flying dragons. However, Kuro declined, saying she was busy on a date. Afterward, they entered a jewelry store, and Kuro asked Kaito to pick out a bracelet for her. Kaito chose a silver bracelet, thinking it would match well with the black outfits she often wore. However, Kuro mentioned that the bracelet was a bit too short, and if she transformed into a mythical creature, the bracelet would break. Since her accessories usually had to be custom-made, she couldn't choose this one. Kaito started thinking about the bracelet, and they shifted the conversation to the fountain. Kuro remarked that they had visited many places today. Suddenly, a flock of birds flew down toward them, and strange sounds echoed in Kaito's mind. Kuro asked if he had just read the thoughts of the birds, similar to how he had sensed the flying dragons earlier. She suggested that Kaito's empathy powers were becoming more apparent. Kuro explained that Kaito could sense emotions within magic, and depending on how he used it, if he spread his power and felt every magical movement of his opponent, he could locate them without needing any words. Kuro observed that Kaito had many hidden potentials yet to be discovered. She stood up and asked if he could guess what she was thinking, but Kaito admitted that he couldn't. Kuro smiled and said she was very happy about today, and that they would continue going out together next time. Since they still had plenty of time, there was no need to rush. Kaito realized that even though they hadn't spent much time together, he had really grown fond of Kuro. He felt that he had received so much from her, but hadn't given anything in return. Kaito told Kuro that next time, he would be the one inviting her, and he wanted to learn more about her. He realized that he wanted to get to know this girl more and move closer to her heart. Meanwhile, about 10 hours earlier, at a mountain north of the capital, a girl had eradicated the swarm of flying dragons and departed from the scene, leaving behind a pile of corpses. Kaito, after his date with Kuro, returned to the bookstore. He mentioned that this was only the second time he had come to this place, so he was still not familiar with the way, and thanked the girl who had accompanied him, that girl being Lind. She couldn't speak as she belonged to the security team in Lilia's mansion. Lind used to be a knight, but after a battle with monsters, her throat was severely injured, rendering her unable to speak anymore. Currently, Lind mainly communicates by writing, but thanks to Kaito's ability to perceive and understand, he could grasp her intentions through her gestures. Looking at the cookbook that Lind was holding, Kaito asked if she often cooked. Lind responded that it was her hobby. When Lind showed interest in the books Kaito was holding, he explained that part of them were for reading in his free time, and the other part was for helping Lilia relieve stress. He remarked that Lilia had seemed rather stressed lately, and even Luna had asked him to help out with that. Lind wrote on a piece of paper that Lilia had been intensely focused on preparing for a major upcoming event, an opportunity where she could speak with the goddess of time, Chronoi. When Kuro mentioned the goddess of time, she asked if Kaito was worried about the upcoming meeting with Chronoi. Kuro noted that although Chronoi's way of speaking might be rigid and serious, in truth, the goddess cared deeply for humanity, so there was no need to be overly concerned. However, Kaito still felt somewhat anxious. Kuro then suggested that he could take Ain with him, since Ain had a close relationship with Chronoi. Kaido thought it would be a good idea, but worried that it might trouble Ein. Kuro reassured him that she believed it would be fine, and just then, Ein appeared. When the time came for them to meet the goddess of time, the group entered the temple. Chronoi, after returning, apologized for summoning them so unexpectedly, but seemed confused about why Ein was present. Immediately, a heated exchange occurred between Ein and Chronoi. Chronoi wondered why Ein was lingering in her domain of time, as if Ein didn't belong there. Ein responded that only a master had the right to bind a servant, and a true servant would not be bound by anything except the will of their master. The two continued their argument and began to engage in battle. Lilia, confused, asked what was happening, and Kaido admitted that he didn't understand either. He remarked that events beyond his comprehension were no longer unfamiliar to him. At that moment, Kaido recalled that Kuro had mentioned his empathetic abilities, suggesting that he could figure out the intentions of both parties through magic. Kaido used his empathy spell to calm the situation, causing both Ai and Chronois to stop, and Chronois was surprised by his ability. Chronois then returned to the main topic, bringing up the fact that the hero's summoning had failed. She and Lilia discussed the original plan and the need to supply enough energy to send everyone back home. Lilia expressed concern about the uncertainties that might arise during the process. Although Kaido didn't fully grasp the conversation, he realized that Lilia had invested a lot of effort into this task and wished she could relax a little. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind, suggesting that they should attend the Sacred Tree Festival. The voice was cold, emotionless, and Kaido quickly realized that it belonged to Shiro. The detached voice continued, telling him that she wasn't physically there, so there was no need for him to turn around. Kaido recognized the voice as entirely devoid of emotion and wondered if it was indeed the goddess Shiro. The voice then confirmed that it was her, much to Kaido's surprise. Shiro explained that she felt he was being left out of the conversation, so she decided to talk to him for fun. Kaido thought to himself that while Shiro was pointing out his vulnerabilities, at least she was taking the time to chat with him, which he guessed might be her own unique form of kindness. Kaido then wondered in his mind about the location of the Sacred Tree Festival that Shiro had mentioned. Shiro responded that it was held in the territory of the Elven Forest. Suddenly, a map appeared in Kaido's mind, clearly indicating the location of the festival. Kaido was astonished, realizing that Shiro had the ability to do something like this. In her usual detached tone, Shiro offered to project the entire festival in his mind, including scenes that might not be appropriate for children. Kaido quickly reacted, insisting that no one had asked for that. At that moment, everyone turned to look at Kaido with confused expressions, asking him what was going on. Kaido realized that he had misspoken. Lilia asked if he wasn't feeling well. She also mentioned to Chronoi that Kaido seemed tired. Lilia advised him not to push himself if things were getting too difficult. Kaido couldn't understand what was happening, thinking that all of this was due to Shiro sending him those messages. He silently wished Shiro would say something. Shiro responded that it was only natural, as the images in his head had stirred some dark thoughts. Kaido insisted that it would be best to explain everything clearly, then told everyone that the goddess had been talking to him through his mind this entire time. Upon hearing that, everyone was shocked. They checked Kaido's pulse and assured him that he was still normal. Lilia also reassured him that everything would be fine. She urged Kaido to stay calm, as the goddess would never toy with someone in such a way. Chronoi suggested that Kaido should go to another room to rest. He noticed that everyone was starting to laugh at him, leaving Kaido bewildered, wondering why Shiro was doing this. He thought that he might be able to communicate with the gods anytime, but now Kaido desperately wished for Shiro to clarify things for him. Just as Chronoi was about to tell Kaido to head to another room, Shiro suddenly appeared and said that they could talk directly if Kaido wanted. Everyone was shocked to see Shiro appear. Lilia immediately knelt down, asking why the Supreme Being, the Creator, had come to this place. Kaido realized that Shiro was the Creator, the highest of the gods. Kaido was about to ask something, but Chronoi stopped him, warning him not to address the goddess by name. However, Shiro declared that she allowed it, and no one had the right to forbid Kaido from doing so. At this moment, Kaido realized that Chronoi was Shiro's servant. He was stunned to see that even Chronoi knelt before Shiro. Chronoi explained that Shiro was the omnipotent ruler of this world. Suddenly, Lilia, still in shock from seeing the Creator before her, fainted. Shiro then continued talking to Kaido as if nothing had happened, stating that he could address her by name, which caught Chronoi by surprise. Kaido silently wished for Shiro to explain everything clearly. As if understanding his thoughts, Shiro explained that Kaido was someone who had been blessed. Chronoi, taken aback, asked why she would bless a mortal. Shiro answered that it was she who had spoken to Kaido back then, because Kuro had requested it, and now she would clarify this misunderstanding. Chronoi asked Kaido who he really was. The goddess Shiro responded that Kaido was someone from another world. Initially, she had intended to handle everything casually, but after meeting Kaido, he piqued her interest. They then sat down for tea, and Shiro mentioned that Kaido had conquered her. The goddess of time, Chronoi, questioned the meaning behind the term conquered. Shiro explained that through interaction, a person could make someone like them, and the highest level of that was an intimate relationship. Shiro's words shocked everyone, and Kaido couldn't understand why the goddess added such troubling details, making everything more complicated. Chronoi, now angry, turned to Kaido and demanded an explanation for this. After hearing Kaido's explanation, Chronoi understood that much of the responsibility lay with the demon lord Kuro, and found the reasoning somewhat convincing. Nevertheless, the fact that Kaido had received the blessing from the deity of this world also meant that he had gained divine protection. Shiro wondered aloud why everyone was making such a big deal out of the situation. In the end, she prepared a private tea set for herself and Kaido. Lilia, observing from a distance, found Kaido to be truly remarkable. He appeared so carefree and natural when faced with an entity like Shiro, whereas merely seeing the creator left Lilia terrified, let alone speaking to her. Chronoi commented that Lilia's reaction was completely normal, as Shiro truly existed on a completely different level. Chronoi also mentioned Shiro's magic, noting that it emitted an overwhelmingly intimidating presence. Without immense power, even acting normally would be difficult. Ain, confused as to why Shiro was conversing with Kaido, guessed that perhaps Kaido was someone special. Chronoi observed that Kaido's magic was adapting to him at an astonishing rate, and his ability to use magic was truly unique. She acknowledged that Kaido was a remarkably talented and intriguing individual. Chronoi told Lilia that, from now on, she should pay close attention to Kaido's dreams. While acquiring power could be easy, whether the powerful beings like Kaido was another matter altogether. Chronoi advised Lilia to be cautious with the other members of the Six Kings. Chronoi warned Lilia not to think of the demon Lord Kuro as being the same as the other members of the Six Kings, as she was truly different. Even among the demons, Kuro was someone special. Chronoi advised Lilia to stay away from the territories of the War King and the Death Sovereign Isis, as dissatisfaction from them would inevitably lead to death. Lilia recalled that she had met the Death Sovereign Isis before. Her presence brought an overwhelming feeling of death and danger. Even the slightest mistake when interacting with Isis could result in death at any moment. Chronoi explained that this issue was related to Isis' past, who, despite being one of the omnipotent beings, was no less terrifying than the rest of the Six Kings. Ain thought to herself that the deathly magic surrounding the Death Sovereign had caused many souls to become sorrowful. But if it were Kaido, she believed something different and more positive might happen. Meanwhile, Kaido was discussing various matters with Shiro, from food to other mundane topics. As the sun set and they returned to the mansion, Lilia appeared quite depressed, completely drained. Luna asked why she looked so exhausted, saying that even visiting the goddess of time shouldn't be this strange. At that moment, Lilia remembered something and turned to confront Kaido, questioning why he had kept that relationship hidden, feeling like she didn't want to live anymore at that point. Wasn't his relationship with Kuro already too much? And now, there was the creator. Not to mention being blessed. What was all this about? The continuous barrage of questions, and Lilia's frantic behavior, made Kaido feel like his soul was about to leave his body. Later, when they returned to their rooms, Kuro laughed happily upon hearing the story. Just by hearing it, she knew it was Shiro's doing. Guessing Kaido must have had a headache over the whole situation. Kaido didn't understand why Kuro found the story, which was far from funny, so amusing. He asked Kuro whether Ain and the goddess of time got along, since they seemed to have many issues with each other. He was afraid they might start punching each other again, which was why he left early. Kuro explained that they often fought, but that was simply their way of expressing gratitude, because the more they fought, the closer they became. Kuro reassured Kaido that after their fight, they'd probably end up drinking together again. Kaido thought to himself that they actually got along pretty well. He asked Shiro if there really was a festival of the elves happening in this place. Kuro confirmed that such a thing existed, as this was the time when the sacred tree of the elves bore fruit, allowing for hunting and gathering. Kato expressed his desire to take Lilia there to help her change her surroundings. Kuro advised him to think it over carefully, as this year was the Hero Festival, so there were many other options. Aside from the main event held in the sister city of the Kari, there were numerous other festivals throughout the year. Kuro mentioned that since Kaito was from another world, he would have many new experiences to enjoy, at least before he eventually left this place. Suddenly, Kuro remembered something and told Kaito to get on the bed and take off his coat. Then, she climbed onto the bed as well and began massaging him, much to Kaito's shock. After a while, Kaito asked if she had ever done this for anyone else before. Kuro responded that she had never done this for anyone. She then said that from now on, she would start applying more pressure and using a completely different technique. Kaito began to drift into a daze, wondering why Kuro had always stayed by his side until now. After all, he was just an ordinary person with no special abilities, while Kuro had such a prestigious identity. He thought about asking Kuro something important, but decided against it, believing deep down that she wouldn't be able to answer. The next morning, Kaito woke up very early. He didn't know if anyone else had already made it to the dining hall, but when he arrived, he saw Lind. It turned out that she had worked the night shift the day before. Since he was up early, Kaito decided to come by and have some tea. Lind offered him a cup, and Kaito found it to be very delicious. She shared that she also enjoyed baking. At that moment, Kaito remembered something and took out the tea leaves that Shiro had given him. He asked Lind if she knew anything about this tea, as it had an amazing flavor, and he wanted to find out where he could buy more. Lind explained that it was called Radiant Tea, an extremely rare type of tea that only existed in the divine realm and possessed magical properties, although it had never appeared on the market. If it ever did, its price could reach tens of thousands per serving. Kaito was shocked, unable to comprehend why Shiro had given him such a precious box of tea. Kaito explained that the tea was a gift from a goddess and asked if Lind would like to enjoy it with him. At first, Lind declined, but Kaito asked her to brew the tea for him, since he wasn't very good at it, and he invited her to share it with him. Lind agreed, brewed the tea, and they enjoyed the tea and pastries together. During the conversation, Kaito learned many interesting things about baking. As they were enjoying their time, Kaito suddenly remembered that Lilia was still working. He went to her room and asked if she had been working all night and if she could take a break, as there was something he wanted to discuss with her. Lilia asked what it was, and Kaito handed her a cup of the tea from Shiro that Lind had brewed. At first, Lilia hesitated, unsure whether she should drink such a rare tea. But when Kaito mentioned that Lind had made it, she couldn't refuse and enjoyed the tea. After drinking it, Lilia complimented the tea, saying it was rich, flavorful, and delicate. Kaito also apologized for disturbing her while she was working. Lilia replied that it was fine, as she often forgot to take breaks when she was busy. Kaito continued to apologize, feeling that she had been working so hard. Lilia reassured him, saying that he had helped her a lot, and she was truly grateful. Although she was a crown princess, her time in the military had distanced her from social circles. Even after she returned to the noble society and tried to re-establish connections, no one really interacted with her. Lilia went on to share that, despite being the head of her family, she never felt strong enough to rely on anyone. This made her feel that she had been taking advantage of her relationship with Kaito to gain benefits, and she sincerely apologized for that. Kaito responded by telling her that he didn't mind at all, and that he was just happy to see her receive good things in life. He also advised Lilia not to worry too much about it. He could tell that Lind was also very concerned about her, and Kaito had noticed that. Kaito then asked Lilia if she and Lind had known each other since their time as knights. Lilia confirmed this, saying that both she and Luna had served under the Duke, but to her, they were still cherished friends. Lilia also mentioned that Lind had often praised Kaito, saying that he was very kind and humorous. Kaito felt grateful for this, and he also quietly reflected on Lind's compliments. At the royal palace of the Kingdom of Symphonia, someone reported to the king that they had inspected a large number of beasts in the western part of the kingdom, and assured him that the issue had been resolved. The king instructed them to inform the citizens to stay away from the mountains, because the flying dragons had fled there. The king was also unsure of the true intentions of the Death Sovereign, Isis. 1/3 of the knights who had been sent to eliminate the dragons had suffered severe psychological trauma after witnessing the presence of the Death Sovereign. Her proximity to the capital had been causing the king growing concern. Isis was known to have a love for books, and perhaps she only wanted to buy a few to read. The king advised that when she arrived in the capital, the number of guards should be reduced and the citizens should be allowed to evacuate to avoid any risks. Any small mistake could lead to an unforeseen disaster. The king wasn't sure whether or not he should inform Duke Lilia about the current situation. He ultimately decided that it was better to do so, considering that the young man from another world, Kaido, did not know just how terrifying this person could be. If by any chance the two of them crossed paths, something unpredictable might happen. Meanwhile, as Kaido was walking down the street, Messenger Crows delivered an urgent report that the Death Sovereign, Isis, was approaching the capital. Kaido noticed a few shops and, upon seeing a general store, decided to step inside. As he entered, he saw the shopkeeper, who looked like a cat, and wondered why the person was dressed like a mascot at that moment. He overheard the shopkeeper muttering about how to deceive the customers. When Kaido realized the shopkeeper had noticed him, he considered leaving, but the shopkeeper asked if he was looking for something. Kaido replied that he wasn't sure, he was just browsing. The shopkeeper then said that their store had everything, and that this was a great opportunity to shop. He then asked Kaido how much money he had, with a rather intimidating expression. Kaido replied that he only had about 1,000 coins. Upon hearing this, the shopkeeper knelt down and begged Kaido to buy something, claiming that their store had a very good reputation. The shopkeeper grabbed Kaido's hand and said it was a pleasure to meet him. But as soon as she touched Kaido, the mascot costume suddenly vanished, revealing the form of a young woman. She was puzzled as to why her magic had worn off and quickly turned her face away. Kaido asked what had happened. Alice, the shopkeeper, explained that it had been a long time since she had shown her face to customers, which was why she wore a mask. Alice asked Kaido if he was looking for anything specific. Kaido asked if she sold shoes. Alice replied that, of course, they had shoes, and she suggested a few pairs of luxurious men's shoes. When Kaido tried on the shoes, he found that her products were of higher quality than he had expected. Though the materials used seemed quite expensive, Kaido asked how much the shoes cost. Alice said they were only a few hundred coins. Kaido, surprised, decided to buy them. Alice then suggested that since he had bought shoes, he might as well pick out a few outfits to match, and she would give him a discount. Kaido wasn't sure if the price was reasonable, as it seemed too cheap, but in the end, he ended up buying a few more items. After the sale, Alice looked very pleased. Kaido asked why she sold these items so cheaply, as it seemed like she would lose money. Alice explained that wasn't really the case since she made everything herself and gathered the materials on her own. Kaido was astonished, as some of the items were even made from a rare type of lizard. Alice explained that yes, it was made from a water lizard, and to create these products, she only needed around 3 million lizards. Nothing too big. Most of the items in the shop were handmade by her. Kaido was surprised to see that the shop also sold sandals, weapons, plush toys, and accessories. He told Alice she was very skilled. Alice explained that she didn't have enough money to import goods from other places, which shocked Kaido, as the quality of her products was both excellent and affordable. Yet no one seemed to be buying them. Alice said that most customers, when they saw her wearing the strange mascot costume, would just open the door and leave immediately. Kaido realized that Alice's mascot outfit might have been scaring off customers. He asked her why, if she couldn't sell the items, she didn't try selling to larger businesses, or something like that. After thinking for a moment, Alice couldn't understand why she had never thought of that before, and realized that she had been quite foolish. Kaido had completed his payment. Alice cheerfully said that this was the first sale she had made since opening the shop. She also told Kaido to become a regular customer. Kaido hadn't expected to buy 5 items from this place and promised to return next time. As Kaido was about to leave, Alice stopped him and said that, as a token of her gratitude for his support, she would offer him some advice. She mentioned that in Kaido's world, there was a story about a hero who flew too close to the sun, causing his wings to melt, and then he fell. She told Kaido to remember that if his wings were made of arrogance, they might melt and cause him to fall. Kaido felt a bit uneasy hearing this, but Alice reassured him that she was just joking and guessed that some things like that might happen. Anyway, she said, being humble was always a better choice. Kaido would never know where danger might be, and not everyone was a good person. After Kaido left, Alice mumbled to herself that she had thought he might be a demon related to both the Demon Lord and other powerful forces. But it turned out he was just an ordinary, kind person. She felt a little disappointed. Just then, the knife in her hand suddenly flew out, and another figure appeared, handing her something. This person told her to carry out a mission and called her the Shadow. Alice told him not to call her that and said she would first review the request and payment for the mission. Meanwhile, Lilia was running hurriedly down the street. Earlier, she had heard the news that the Death Sovereign, Isis, had arrived at the southern gate of the capital. The king had officially issued a curfew. At that moment, a servant entered and informed her that they had located the others. But Cato had left 2 hours ago and had yet to return. Lilia was now feeling anxious, realizing that she was one step behind. Although her brother had planned ahead and informed her, if she had known even a little sooner, even if it was just a rumor, perhaps things would have been better. Lilia decided that she would go look for Cato herself, and until she gave orders, no one was allowed to leave. As she ran down the street, Lilia thought to herself that Cato was unaware of the dangers lurking in the capital, and perhaps he was just wandering around somewhere. She prayed that Cato would be safe. Stepping out of the store, watching the sunset slowly descend, Cato felt that something was wrong. There was no one outside, and suddenly, he sensed a dark, ominous power. Cato immediately turned around. It was a girl radiating an extremely mysterious energy. Cato realized that he couldn't move and felt as if he was being swallowed by the gaze of a deadly snake. If he moved, he would die instantly. At that moment, terrifying visions flashed in Cato's mind. He thought it was probably just an illusion, but he couldn't stop himself from being afraid. He wanted to run away from this place immediately, or he would die. The girl spoke, remarking that this power was strange, and asked if Cato was a hero. Cato, overwhelmed with fear, felt as though he had returned to the moment when he lost his parents in the accident, with death seemingly written across his face. When Cato didn't respond, the girl repeated her question, asking again if he was a hero. Cato knew he had to try and answer. There was no resisting her. Hesitantly, he replied that he was from another world, but was not a hero. The girl seemed to understand something, and introduced herself as Isis, the Death Sovereign, and then said it was a pleasure to meet him, extending her hand for a handshake. Looking at the small hand before him, Cato suddenly felt terrified, as if something was telling him that he needed to flee from this place immediately. Cato collapsed to the ground, letting out whimpers, and Isis seemed to realize something, looking a little dejected and sad. At that moment, Cato sensed her loneliness. She had always been alone. He didn't understand what this girl wanted, only that she had asked if he was a hero, introduced herself, and extended her hand. That was all. Cato reassured himself that she wasn't dangerous. It was just a handshake. Now, Cato tried to calm himself. He thought that if he ran away now, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Slowly, with his trembling hand, Cato reached out, despite his survival instincts warning him not to do so. Cato didn't understand why he was being so reckless, but he felt that he needed to shake hands properly. Isis was also quite surprised that Cato actually responded, even though it was clearly difficult for him. Cato reflected on his own fears, how he had always worried about losing someone and thus created distance. But ever since coming to this world and meeting Kuro, he had learned that small acts of kindness could save others. Remembering Kuro's smile, Cato realized that what he needed to do now was to face Isis. As their hands touched, Cato said that it was a pleasure to meet her. He introduced himself and said he was honored to know her. Looking at him, Isis suddenly started to cry. She smiled and told him to call her Isis. Then, out of the blue, Isis said they should get married, leaving Cato completely stunned. A little later, while walking down the street, Cato felt exhausted as today had been overwhelmingly long. Suddenly, a voice called out his name. It was Lilia, and she looked furious. She told him that she would explain later, but for now, they had returned to the mansion immediately. She then picked Cato up and rushed straight back home. When they arrived, everyone at the mansion seemed very alarmed. Luna said it was a relief that both of them had returned safely. Lilia then told Cato that, at least until tomorrow, he should avoid going outside. Cato, puzzled, asked if something had happened. Lilia explained that the Death Sovereign had arrived in the capital. Cato asked again, confirming if the Death Sovereign was the infamous demon who would kill anyone who displeased her. Lilia confirmed this, and added that the king had issued a curfew throughout the capital. Cato was surprised that there was even a curfew in place. Lilia continued, explaining that the Death Sovereign was surrounded by an extraordinarily dangerous and deadly aura. Some said that even well-trained individuals could have their physical condition destroyed simply by being in her presence, or even die after just one glance. These words made Kaido think back to his encounter with Isis, and he began to realize that the person he had met was, in fact, the Death Sovereign. Lilia continued to remind him that until the situation improved, he should stay indoors. Kaido interrupted, asking if that Death Sovereign wasn't named Isis, right? The air suddenly went silent. Lilia asked how he knew her name, since Kaido hadn't even met her, and a suppression spell had been applied to conceal her identity. Lilia also guessed that maybe Kaido had heard it from Kuro, but Kaido admitted that he had just met Isis. Lilia was stunned, nearly collapsing. Luna spoke up, saying that Kaido had returned safely after encountering the Death Sovereign, which was very fortunate. She also mentioned that she had heard that Isis was a god with a very unpredictable temperament, and the fact that Kaido was able to befriend her was impressive. Kaido awkwardly confessed that Isis had actually expressed her intention to visit him. Lilia, horrified, thought that the Death Sovereign was planning to visit the mansion, and worried that Isis might massacre everyone there. Kaido calmly explained that Isis just wanted to make friends and had asked to visit. He had agreed. Lilia, in disbelief, asked if Kaido was joking, reminding him that the Death Sovereign was the most terrifying figure among the 6 kings and could destroy the entire kingdom if she wished. Kaido recalled the girl he had met and reassured Lilia that Isis was his friend. He even showed Lilia the crystal flower that Isis had given him. Lilia remarked that the blue crystal was unusual but contained an incredibly strong protective magic. Seeing Lilia's pensive expression, she commented that Kaido's relationships were absurd, suggesting that he and his friends could destroy the kingdom if they wanted to. Hearing these words, Kaido realized that Isis was indeed the Death Sovereign, but he remembered the moment when she held his hand, her face filled with joy and happiness. Returning to the present, Kaido couldn't stop thinking about Isis, remembering her joyful expression when they met. In another place, Isis was in an endless library, smiling as she thought that she had finally found her destiny. 1,000 years ago in the demon realm, Isis had been furious when the person in front of her refused to allow her to step into the human realm. Isis said that it wasn't any of their business. The goddess in front of her reminded that the human and demon realms had just signed the pact, and she wouldn't allow the newly signed agreement to be broken. Isis asked what that had to do with her, to which Lilywood responded that Isis's death magic would terrify all living beings. Isis, furious, protested that it wasn't true, but Lilywood countered, saying that to humanity, Isis was indeed a symbol of fear. In a fit of rage, Isis denied it repeatedly and began summoning a magic circle. Just as the circle was about to form, it shattered. Kuro appeared just in time, relieved that she had made it. Lilywood remarked that if it had been just her alone, the damage could have been catastrophic. Isis looked at both Kuro and Lilywood, asking if Kuro intended to interfere in this matter. Kuro said she understood how Isis felt, but asked if Isis could wait a little longer. At the moment, the human realm was still fearful, and even though Isis wanted to befriend them, it was still too difficult. Isis turned away without saying another word, tears streaming down her face. Kuro, seeing this, was deep in thought. Lilywood emphasized that this time they couldn't help Isis either, as the 3-realm pact had already been signed. Lilywood sensed Isis's loneliness, while Kuro realized that Isis desperately wanted someone to accept her unconditionally, not for her power. In the past, aside from the 6 kings, no one had ever welcomed Isis, whether in the divine realm or the human realm. Even in the demon realm, no one truly understood why Isis had been ostracized. Over the course of 100 years, the relationship between the 3 realms had strengthened, especially between the 6 kings and humanity. The demon lord Kuro had become beloved for her friendly and outgoing personality. The war sovereign, though strict, was respected for his courage. The dragon lord had become the god of commerce, while the shadow lord remained a mysterious figure, never appearing before the public. Meanwhile, Isis had always been alone, seen as the embodiment of death. Returning to her castle, Isis thought about the story of a young man who searched for a blue flower to give to his beloved. She wondered if she could ever give such a flower to someone. Then one day, when she stepped into the human realm, she met Kaido, the only person who didn't fear her, and took her hand. Isis felt that this was the destiny she had been waiting for over 1,000 years. Isis then went to see Lilywood, the ruler of the human realm, the Heavenly Earth King, to ask her what gift she should buy for Kaido. Lilywood was surprised, as it was rare for Isis to seek her out. Isis asked Lilywood for advice on what kind of gift she should get. Lilywood wondered if Isis intended to give a gift to someone. Isis responded that she had made a friend, and that friend was a human. Lilywood was astonished, wondering how there could be a human in the human realm who was strong enough to befriend Isis. Isis explained that Cato wasn't very strong. In fact, compared to a knight, he was far weaker. But the important thing was that he had taken her hand and invited her to visit his home anytime. Lilywood couldn't quite grasp whether the person Isis was talking about was a human or an otherworldly creature, but she was certain he wasn't a hero. Isis continued to say that Cato was a kind and wonderful person. Lilywood found this strange, as she recalled hearing about a mishap during this year's summoning. She also remembered the royal banquet where Cato hadn't attended and was confused by his absence. Lilywood reassured Isis, suggesting that maybe Cato had other plans or was possibly ill. She advised Isis to remain calm and hear everything through. However, Isis, furious, declared that if Cato was mistreated, she would kill everyone involved and destroy any country that dared to bully him. Lilywood gently comforted Isis, telling her that if she did such things, Cato surely wouldn't be happy. Upon hearing this, Isis became more despondent and muttered to herself that if it would make Cato sad, she wouldn't cause any trouble. Lilywood then asked Isis about the gift she intended to give Cato, suggesting that if he was from another world, perhaps a local delicacy from this realm would be a good choice. Isis smiled, feeling more cheerful, but still uncertain about what Cato would like. Seeing the smile on Isis's face, Lilywood felt grateful that she had been able to bring some joy to her. In the end, Lilywood advised not to give something too large or overwhelming as a gift. A few days later, Cato went to Lilia's room because someone had called him from inside. Upon entering, he saw that Chronoi was already seated there, wanting to talk. Chronoi asked whether the rumor about Cato becoming friends with the Lord of Death was true. Cato nodded in confirmation. Chronoi warned that his presence sometimes caused more trouble than benefits, especially with someone like Isis, who was considered the most troublesome of the 6 kings. She was known for holding grudges and getting angry easily if she felt disrespected. Suddenly, Chronois noticed a bird carrying a magical letter. She instructed Cato to touch it, and from there, a message appeared, announcing that Isis would arrive this afternoon. Chronois sighed, saying she was right to come here, and reassured Lilia not to worry. From outside, the atmosphere became cold and ominous as Isis appeared. Despite bringing an aura of death, she still entered in her usual solitary manner. Cato noticed everyone around him trembling, quite different from when Kuro had visited earlier, which left him a little confused. Isis approached Cato, greeted him and apologized for arriving early, then asked if she was bothering him. Cato smiled and said that it wasn't a bother at all. On the contrary, he was happy to see her again. Chronois suddenly spoke up, saying it had been a while since they last met and that Isis should choose a more appropriate time for her visits. Isis was surprised to see her there, and Chronois explained that she was a friend of the house's owner. Isis gave Cato a gift and then turned to greet Lilia, introducing herself cheerfully. Chronois remarked that today, Isis's aura of death didn't seem as heavy as usual, perhaps because she was in a good mood. However, the atmosphere turned tense when Isis suddenly asked Lilia why Cato wasn't invited to the New Year's banquet. Lilia froze, and Chronois quickly asked Isis what she planned to do after hearing the answer. Isis appeared furious, stating that if Cato was treated unfairly, she would kill everyone, including the owner of the house. Lilia panicked, while Chronois stepped in front of Isis, firmly stating that she would not let that happen. Isis warned Chronois that if she dared interfere, she would kill her too. Cato quickly intervened, saying that they shouldn't fight. Chronois said that reasoning with Isis was impossible, but to everyone's surprise, Isis agreed to stop if Cato assured that everything was fine. Cato explained that on the day of the banquet, Kuro had invited him out, so he didn't attend, and it wasn't because he was mistreated. Hearing this, Isis understood and apologized to Lilia for the misunderstanding. Chronois then reminded Isis that she was very powerful and shouldn't say reckless things like threatening to kill everyone. Chronoi asked Cato how he managed to make someone like Isis so obedient. Isis replied that because Cato had invited her to his home, she wanted to give him a gift and promised to help him if he ever needed anything. After that, they all went inside for tea. Isis looked around the room and complimented Cato, saying that his room was beautiful. She asked him about his interest in reading, and Kato replied that he recently enjoyed reading mythology, particularly stories about the founding hero. Isis smiled, feeling excited about their conversation. She mentioned that she had also read the book Kato was referring to. Kato found the adventures in the book thrilling and realized the story was based on real events. Isis explained that although the book was mostly accurate to history, there were a few inaccuracies, such as the ending where the hero returned to his world. In reality, the hero had stayed with Kuro. Kato recalled hearing Kuro mention that story and brought up Hikari, if he remembered correctly. Isis confirmed, saying that the girl was indeed Hikari, but she now went by a new name, Nin. Kato was utterly surprised to hear about Hikari, remembering what Kuro had said about her. Isis shared that Hikari had requested that this matter remain a secret, but since Kato was special to her, it was alright. She promised to bring the book she mentioned next time to share with Kato. Kato thanked her, as he was still unfamiliar with the culture and books of this world. Later, Isis offered Kato some cake, and she complimented that the cake tasted better thanks to him. Suddenly, a tear fell from Isis' eye. Kato, concerned, asked what had happened, and Isis apologized, saying that it had been a long time since she felt this happy, doing normal things like drinking tea and discussing her favorite book. Isis confided that even though she had close friends like Kuro, who was loved by many, she still felt lonely because her power isolated her from others. Kato sincerely responded that he could talk to her normally thanks to a special ability called empathy. Although he wasn't sure he could fully understand her feelings, Kato promised that he would never fear or avoid her. Those words moved Isis deeply, and she thanked Kato for bringing her joy today. As they parted, Isis promised to bring more gemstones for Lilia next time. Before Isis left, Kato called out to her and asked if he could visit her home next time. Isis, overjoyed, assured him that he would always be welcome. After Isis left, Chronoi asked Kaito to sit back down to talk. She realized that Kaito seemed to trust Kuro too much, which could lead to misunderstandings, because the influence of the Lord of Hell on him might be greater than he thought. Chronois didn't intend to interfere with his personal relationships, but Kuro was someone special, on par with the Creator. Chronoi recounted that long ago, a great conflict occurred between the Divine Realm and the Demon Realm, when a demon with unparalleled power gathered other wicked demons to attack the Divine Realm. That demon was Kuro, the Lord of Hell. She was the only one who had ever made Chronois feel fear. The battle between Kuro and the Creator was known only to the two of them, and when Chronoi asked Shiro, the Creator, the outcome, the answer was that the fight ended in a draw. Afterward, Kuro seemed to forget about the battle and continued living freely, nurturing demons and humans like she was caring for baby birds. Chronoi said that although Kuro often behaved like a child, in reality, she was incredibly intelligent and extremely powerful. However, Chronois didn't believe Kuro was an evil demon. It was just that she never acted recklessly and always had a purpose, though no one, not even her closest servant Ain, knew what that purpose was. Chronoi advised Kaito not to be reckless and to be careful, not only to avoid getting harmed, but also to protect those around him. Kaito objected, saying that Kuro had always treated him very well. Chronois understood Kaito's feelings toward Kuro, but reminded him that if anyone could reform the Lord of Hell, it could only be Kaito. At that moment, a disciple from the temple appeared and informed Chronoi that someone was waiting to meet her, prompting her to leave. Chronoi recalled a time when she had been drinking with Ain, who had remarked that Kuro was a great mystery. Kuro had once spoken about her loneliness, but Ain had advised her not to dwell too much on it. The story then shifted to Kuro meeting with Isis and Lilywood. Isis and Lilywood were choosing books to give Kaito, and Kuro was surprised that the recipient was him. Lilywood asked if Kuro knew Kaito, and Kuro replied that he was her friend. Lilywood was curious, as humans typically couldn't withstand death magic, yet Kaito was able to befriend Isis. Kuro explained that Kaito had the ability to adapt to magic through a special skill called empathy. If Kaito accepted the adaptation, magic would have no effect on him, but the process took time. To adapt to death magic, Kaito must have put in a lot of effort to befriend Isis. Hearing this, Isis felt very happy and content. Kuro felt joy witnessing Kaito's growth and his friendship with Isis. When Lilywood and Isis inquired further, Kuro didn't reveal her thoughts, only saying that she was happy to see Isis so joyful. Kuro also felt warmth in her heart, seeing her two friends finding happiness in their lives. When Isis asked if Kuro often visited Kato, Lily would remark that Kuro had been quite daring to visit the Symphonia Nation, and asked if Kuro could help in arranging the Hero Festival. At that moment, the atmosphere suddenly grew tense as Kuro displayed anger about the nation abandoning Kaito. Both Kuro and Isis were ready to destroy the nation, which caused Lilywood to panic. She quickly pleaded with Kuro to stop this action, promising that she would make sure the king of Symphonia properly apologized. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Emperor of Symphonia felt a chill run down his spine, sensing the impending danger. Lilia was surprised when Kaito invited her to the Sacred Tree Festival, as it was an event of the spirits on a different level and usually very crowded with visitors. People often said it was worth attending at least once in a lifetime. Kaito confirmed that he wanted to invite Lilia to go with him. Luna was intrigued, seeing this as a good opportunity to relax after a lot of stressful work. Lilia admitted that she had never attended this festival, which surprised Kaito, given that she was the eldest princess, raised in a sheltered environment. Linda, who came from the land where the festival was held, knew a lot about it and was excited to join. Haina, overly excited, unconsciously used magic to jump high, which made Kaito reflect on how quickly his companions were developing their magical skills. He thought to himself about Kuro's book and wondered if his empathy magic might be the weakest. Later, Kaito met with Kuro and asked if she could help him understand more about magic and about herself. Kuro was surprised that Kaito wasn't concerned about what she revealed about her true form. Everyone else was shocked by Kuro's appearance, but Kaito remained unfazed, saying it was no different from a puff of black smoke or a strange shape. Kaito reassured her that he didn't need to know about her past. What mattered to him was that she was someone he was grateful for and respected. Kaito also decided to learn more about defense before heading to the Spirit Forest, which made Kuro happy to see how he had grown and was becoming more mindful of protecting others. Afterward, Kaito decided to take a walk and stop by an old shop, where he'd encountered Alice dressed in a cat outfit. She was so hungry that she collapsed to the floor, and Kaito gave her some sandwiches, which she gratefully devoured quickly. Kaito jokingly asked if the sandwiches were going to run away. Alice complained that she hadn't eaten in 4 days, which led Kaito to ask about the money he had previously given her. Alice confessed that she had spent all the money on gambling, which made Kaito angry, and he lightly tapped her on the head. Alice reacted with a pout, but Kaito bluntly said he couldn't believe anyone would gamble away all their earnings. Kaito noticed that Alice's shop was in such a poor state that it was at risk of closing down. He asked Alice if she had any special products. Alice introduced a bear costume, a disguise outfit integrated with various magical features, such as temperature regulation, self-cleaning, and healing effects. Kaito was impressed by the craftsmanship of the product, but wondered why she hadn't made a mattress or sleeping bag to cater to adventurers. Alice was surprised by this idea and thought it could be a big hit. Kaito offered to help Alice connect with a high-end magic company, which left her astonished that he had such connections. After leaving the shop, Kaito and Alice spent the afternoon playing chess. Despite losing, Alice teased Kaito for being terrible at the game and demanded that he bring a gift next time. As Kaito was leaving, he noticed something odd. He realized that he had never mentioned to Alice that he knew magic or that he came from another world. The atmosphere around him felt strange, as if there was some mystery at play. Suddenly, a voice called out, asking if he was someone from another world. It was a girl who wanted to ask him a few things, and her final question was whether Kaito had ever heard the phrase, "working is failing." Kaito pondered over the statement, "working is failing," not understanding what this girl was talking about. He asked who she was. She introduced herself, saying that people called her Fate. Kaito introduced himself as well. Fate said she was pleased to meet him and asked Kaito if, in his world, there was a job where people didn't have to work. Kaito thought about it, trying to find an answer. Fate, delighted, said she truly respected such people and had decided to become a NEET. Kaito didn't understand what this strange girl was talking about. Fate then declared that she and Kaito had already become soulmates, hadn't they? When a soulmate was in trouble, Kaito should help them, right? Kaito responded that he would help if it was within his ability. Kaito was still unsure what Fate was thinking. He suspected she might be trying to deceive him or something of the sort. Suddenly, Fate told Kaito to hide her. Kaito, confused, didn't understand what was happening. Fate explained that she was being chased by bad people and wanted to hide somewhere they couldn't find her. Kaito asked why anyone would be chasing her. Fate replied that it was a pain, but there wasn't time to explain, and she begged Kaido to save her. Afterward, Fate asked Kaido to pull her along because moving was so exhausting. They returned to the mansion, and seeing Lilia in shock, Kaido realized that this person was the goddess of destiny. He asked Fate if she was a goddess. Fate confirmed, saying that she was the goddess who governed destiny. At that moment, Lilia, consumed by death energy, stated that she would talk to Kaido later. Kaido asked Fate if she was truly being pursued. Lilia wondered who could possibly chase the goddess of destiny. Fate asked not to be called the goddess of destiny and said it was better if everyone just called her by her name. Kaido then asked who in the world could be powerful enough to chase down a supreme god. Fate said it was a demon, someone who not only took away her freedom, but also took pleasure in tormenting others. Suddenly, a voice chimed in, commenting that this demon seemed difficult to deal with. Fate continued, saying that the demon was very stubborn. Then, Fate realized something and turned around. Standing behind her was Chronoid, the goddess of time. Chronoid, visibly angry, remarked that it seemed the goddess of destiny no longer wanted to breathe as she yelled at Fate, reminding her that she had already warned her to stop running away. Fate retorted that she wasn't going to endure the torture of work again. Chronoid sternly said it was her responsibility as a supreme god, and that Fate needed to be aware of her position. At this point, Kaido and Lilia realized that Chronoid was the one chasing Fate. Chronoid, clearly upset, apologized to Lilia and Kaido for the disturbance, and said that she would take this thing back and make Fate work even harder. Fate protested, claiming that she was going to live here and become an NEET, with Kaido supporting her. Kaido, unsure of what to do, looked at Fate, who clearly wanted to avoid work, and awkwardly said that it might sound strange, but could they let her stay just for today? Chronoid warned Kaido not to feel pity for her, saying that even if they let her off today, Fate would just run away again tomorrow. Kaido responded that he would figure something out and try to talk to Shiro about it. Suddenly, a voice rang out. It was Shiro, who stated that she had one condition. She wanted a date with Kaido, feeling it was unfair that only Kuro had that opportunity. Shiro asked what Kaido always wanted her to do. Kaido spoke to her in his mind, then conveyed the message to Fate. Fate, confused, asked who Kaido was talking to. Chronoid told her that Kaido was speaking with the goddess. Fate was astonished that Kaido could actually do that. At this moment, Shiro understood Kaido's desire and suddenly appeared. Fate immediately knelt down. Shiro told Fate to work seriously tomorrow. Fate, reluctantly, said that even if it killed her, she would carry out the task assigned to her. Shiro replied that everything was settled and then left. Afterward, seeing the two people kneeling before him, Kaido felt a bit awkward. Fate asked Kaido if he was some kind of monster. Chronoid added that she didn't want to deny that. In the end, the matter was resolved. Fate was still reluctant to work properly, but she knew she had to. Today, however, she would relax as much as possible. Kaido was surprised that Fate actually listened to Shiro. Fate explained that to them, Shiro was absolute. If they disobeyed or disappointed her, it would feel as if they had lost their reason for existing. At this moment, Fate suddenly came up with a mischievous idea and invited Kaido to run away from this place with her, though he refused. While she was still cheerfully planning, a hand grabbed Fate by the head and dragged her away. Kuro had arrived, furious, and threw Fate outside. Kuro told Kaido that she would borrow Fate for a bit. A while later, Fate returned after being disciplined, crying and promising not to do anything foolish again. Kuro warned that if Fate ever did something similar without Kaido's consent, she would make sure Fate disappeared next time. Afterward, while Kaido was tidying up his belongings, Fate was surprised by how much he had bought and asked where he was going. Kaido explained that he was preparing for the Sacred Tree Festival, and he had even bought an umbrella in case it rained, although he hoped for sunshine that day. Fate confidently declared that if Kaido was going to the Sacred Tree Festival, she would ensure it was sunny, then did something mysterious, and told him he wouldn't need the umbrella anymore. Kaido was confused, so Fate explained that since she was the goddess of destiny, she could manipulate everything, including the weather, making it align perfectly with her will. Fate proudly mentioned that she could also see others' fates just by looking at them, but was puzzled as to why she couldn't see Kaido's future. She recalled that Chronoid, the goddess of time, had once said that Kaido possessed the awareness of the Creator, which might be why she couldn't read his destiny. Fate then glanced at the outfit Kaido was holding and asked if he planned to wear it to the Sacred Tree Festival. Kaido confirmed that he had bought it specifically for that occasion. Although Fate couldn't see Kaido's destiny, She could clearly see the fate of the outfit he was holding and told him, "Don't die, okay?" Meanwhile, at the Sinfonia Castle, the goddess Lilywood had arrived. She got straight to the point regarding Kaido, the person from another world. Because the king had not invited Kaido to the New Year's banquet, Lilywood decreed that the king must publicly apologize to Kaido in front of the entire nation. The king had to sincerely apologize for his actions, and Lilywood warned that if he didn't apologize soon, she would sever all ties with the kingdom of Symphonia. Kaido and the others were riding on the back of a wyvern, heading toward the Sacred Tree Festival. When Kaido expressed his desire to ride the wyvern a bit longer, Aola looked up at the sky and remarked that the weather was beautiful today. Kaido remembered Fate, the goddess of destiny, who had predicted that the weather would be perfect on this day. Fate had said that she had intervened a bit in destiny to ensure everything went according to Kaido's wishes. But she had warned that once the magic wore off, Kaido needed to stay alert. As Kaido's group approached the festival, a dragon flew up and landed on his shoulder. Kaido recognized it as the young dragon they had encountered earlier. Aola commented that the dragon seemed to have grown incredibly attached to Kaido in just a few hours. The dragon trainer asked Kaido if he wanted to become a dragon tamer, leaving Lilia both surprised and confused by how easily Kaido could form bonds even with dragons. At the festival, the crowd was bustling. Lilia reminded everyone to be careful, noticing that Lind had already separated from the group. While searching for Lind, a colorful group of spirits appeared, warmly welcoming the guests. Kaido spotted Lind and sensed that something was off. After a brief conversation, Kaido discovered that the two spirits were actually Lind's parents. Lind's mother said it had been a long time since they last saw Lilia and asked how she was doing. Lilia replied that everything was going well. Lind's mother teased that Lind seemed gloomy and warned her that if she kept acting that way, it would be hard to find a husband. Meanwhile, Lind was still quite upset that their group had been separated earlier. Realizing the situation, Kaido handed Lind a magic bracelet and told her to wear it. When Lind pressed the cat symbol on the bracelet, she felt her thoughts gradually being converted into text, leaving her astonished. Kaido explained that it was a magical tool designed to help transmit consciousness. Lind's mother couldn't help but be surprised that Kaido possessed such a peculiar magical item. Lilia suggested that it might be a gift from the King of Hell or one of Kaido's other connections. After everyone wandered around the area, Lind's parents asked if this was Kaido's first time attending the Sacred Tree Festival and whether he was going to participate in the competition. The festival would last for 3 days, with each day having a different theme. The first day featured a monster hunting competition, the second day was a fruit-picking contest from the Sacred Tree, and the third night would be the official celebration. Hina remarked that today's atmosphere was already bustling, but Lind's mother commented that the third night would be even more lively. Kaido noticed a food stall in the distance and thought that Kuro would definitely enjoy the treats. He recalled that Kuro had once wanted to attend the festival, but couldn't because every time she went outside, she had to use magic to suppress awareness, so as not to attract attention. However, with the massive crowd at the festival, even if Kuro used all her magic, as soon as one person recognized her, she would be swarmed immediately. At that moment, an announcement echoed through the area. The host mentioned that there was an extremely important update regarding the prize for the hunting competition at this year's festival. Since the festival coincided with the 1000th anniversary of the forest, there would be a special gift from the King of Heaven and Earth, Lilywood. This year's prize would be the legendary restorative fruit from the World Tree, an extraordinarily valuable reward. Lilia suddenly seemed deep in thought, while Aoi wondered about the fruit's value. Lind's father explained that it was a miraculous item, not only healing all wounds, but also capable of restoring lost voices. He had heard that Lilywood rarely gave such a gift, but today she had decided to offer it. Kaido noticed that Lilia was acting a bit strange. She seemed more serious than usual. She told Lind's family that she was determined not to let the prize slip away this time. Luna tried to dissuade her, but Lilia had already made up her mind, declaring that she was determined to win and claim the fruit. Afterward, they split up, with Lilia quickly leaving while Kaido walked with Lind. Kaido asked her if she was worried about Lilia. Lind nodded, concerned about Lilia's condition, and decided to leave first. Suddenly, amid the crowd, a voice called out Kaido's name. It was Lazria, a small spirit, who was surprised to see him here. She said it had been a while, and she was here to get some fresh air. Lazria asked about Kaido's blessing from Shiro and explained that it meant he was cherished by this world. Kaido also mentioned that he had received a blessing from the goddess, which made Lasria very happy. At that moment, Kaido spotted someone else. Nin, still dressed in her fully covered outfit. She offered Kaido a dish of tofu she had diligently prepared after learning how to make it from him. Kaido tasted both pieces and said that Nin's tofu gave him a sense of home, making him feel at peace. She beamed, as it was the first time a man had said such a thing to her. But she quickly became flustered and ran off, confused about her emotions. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, Luna and Lilia were practicing for the competition. Luna dropped her sword again, and Lilia urged her to take things more seriously since there wasn't much time left. Lilia was determined to win and claim the fruit of the World Tree. She recalled the moment when Lind lost her voice, and if the World Tree fruit could heal that, then Lilia was certain she had to obtain it. After strolling around with Lasria, she thanked Kaido for a fun day and said she looked forward to seeing him again next time. Kaido checked his watch and realized he still had some time left. He silently blamed himself for causing Lilia more worry. As Kaido was about to buy some grilled skewers, he accidentally dropped a coin. A man picked it up and asked if it was his. The man then asked if Kaido was from another world. Kaido confirmed, surprised that this man knew his name. The man introduced himself as Ozma, a demon, and said that Kaido was quite famous in both the demon and human realms, especially for befriending both the King of Hell and the Lord of Death, Isis. Ozma understood that Kaido must have had a tough time being suddenly summoned to this world and invited him for a chat. After listening to Kaido share his thoughts, Ozma realized that Kaido wanted to repay someone but didn't know how. He advised that Kaido's kindness was admirable, but there was no need to worry or rush. Help from others doesn't always need to be repaid immediately, and sometimes simply accepting that help without overthinking is enough. Ozma bid Kaido farewell, telling him not to hesitate to reach out if he ever wanted to talk. That evening at the restaurant, the atmosphere became heavy. Luna asked why everyone had split up earlier, and the other girls responded. Kaido noticed that Lilia seemed quite absent-minded. In his head, the voice of the goddess Shiro echoed, asking Kaido if he wanted her to reveal something. Kaido thought that this situation was a little unfair to Lilia. Shiro understood and told him to open his palm, where a gem appeared, which she gave to Kaido. Lilia suddenly, in a daze, said she was full and left to rest. Luna decided to bring her dinner to her room. Elsewhere, the goddess Chronoise asked Shiro what she had just given to Kaido. Shiro replied that it was merely a magic crystal, without any concept of purity. Shiro mentioned that when the time came, this crystal could help Kaido survive. Chronoise, worried, asked what would happen to Kaido, but Shiro didn't say more. Kaido looked out the window and saw that Lilia was still training. He rushed down and called out to her. Lilia thanked him, but insisted that she needed to keep going. Kaido was about to leave, but Lilia asked if he could spare a moment to listen to her story. Lilia then began to talk about her past. Originally, she was a princess, and her brother was the crown prince of the kingdom of Symphonia. Her brother was the son of a concubine, and even after ascending to the throne, he constantly faced pressure from the noble factions. At that time, Lilia was only 7 years old, but already understood the complexities of the royal family. Now, she was caught up in disputes with her brother's children, between those of royal blood and those without. Lilia didn't care much about the throne, but she didn't want to betray the people who had placed their expectations on her. She was uncertain about what she truly wanted, and that became the biggest mistake of her life. If Lilia had declared earlier that she had no intention of becoming the next ruler, Lin wouldn't have needed to warn her about it. Lin had once asked why Lilia didn't express her intentions, worried that in the end, the one who would be hurt the most would be Lilia. From a very young age, Lin had always been by Lilia's side, even though their statuses were different. Lin's father was a royal mage, so they had been together for a long time. Lin taught Lilia how to use a sword, and at some point, Lin became both a swordsmanship mentor and an older sister figure to her. They joined the Night Order together and experienced many wonderful moments, until the accident happened. At the time, Lilia was the commander of the 2nd Division, and Linda was the vice commander. During a monster outbreak, the divisions combined forces to fight. Lilia had given command to Lin while she attended a meeting with the other divisions, and that was the last time Lilia heard Lin's voice. The information about the safe area had been tampered with. What was supposed to be a safe zone turned out to be the center of the monster swarm. By the time Lilia realized the mistake and rushed back as fast as she could, it was too late. Lin had been gravely injured while protecting a soldier from monsters. Thanks to the intervention of other divisions, the monsters were eventually defeated. But Lilia's division had been ambushed at night. Although they were lucky to survive with no major casualties, Lind had sustained a severe injury. Even though healing magic was used, Lind's voice was lost forever. Lilia couldn't find out who had sabotaged the information, but she believed it was orchestrated by those aligned with the prince and princess, people who didn't want her to claim glory or lead an army into battle. Nevertheless, Lind never blamed Lilia, and Lind's parents didn't either. But Lilia couldn't forgive herself. After being awarded her position, Lilia ran away, not wanting anyone else around her to get hurt. At the same time, Lilia had tried everything to restore Lind's voice, but nothing worked. Now there was finally something that could heal Lind, and Lilia desperately wanted to win it. In that moment, Kaido had a thought and handed Lilia Kuro's search bracelet, a bracelet that contained search magic. Kaido thought that the bracelet would help Lilia in the upcoming monster hunting competition. Even though the timing wasn't ideal, Kaido was determined to support Lilia in any way he could. Lilia felt guilty for telling such a long story, but Kaido reassured her that he didn't think she was at fault. On the day of the hunting competition, the host explained the rules. Competitors would be awarded points based on the number and quality of the monsters they hunted, with the black bear being the most valuable. Kaido wondered about the difference between black bears and red bears, and Lind's father explained that red bears were common but uneatable. The purpose of this competition was to control the sudden increase in monster numbers. Kaido wondered if Lilia and her team would be able to win. A spirit nearby commented that, to be honest, it would be a very difficult task. Still, they had a chance, but the other competitors were also very strong. This year, there were two participants who were far superior to the rest: a knight in full armor and a pink-haired fairy. Kaido realized that if those two were involved, things became clearer. Even so, he had to trust in Lilia and hope she would do her best. Meanwhile, Kaido's group and the two girls from another world were discussing the competition. It seemed that many types of magic would be used. Alla wanted to try creating a golem or something similar, like in a game she had once played. Although Aoi thought it would be difficult, she somehow managed to pull it off. Afterward, Aoi pondered something and asked whether, a year from now, when they left this world, they would still be able to use magic. Kaido, in the meantime, continued to wonder how Lilia and her team were doing in the competition. Elsewhere, Lilia was furiously defeating monsters with the help of the search tool in Kuro's bracelet. Luna was amazed at how quickly they were hunting monsters, and Lilia explained that it was thanks to the search tool. However, there was something odd. They still hadn't found a single black bear. Meanwhile, three other people began a race to reach the wall on the other side, but suddenly a loud explosion echoed, and a black bear appeared right in front of Hina. Kaido urged Hina to quickly cast her magic as everyone around them was in complete panic. However, she was too scared and suddenly collapsed. Kaido rushed to her side, recalling the training sessions with Kuro in his mind. Kuro had once said that Kaido had improved a lot and reminded him to only use empathic magic as a last resort. This was an offensive magic that only Kaido could wield. But if he failed to defeat his opponent, the outcome would be far worse. Kuro had warned him not to act recklessly. Nevertheless, in this situation, Kaido decided that he could not stand idly by. He couldn't back down and let his friends fall into danger. Kaido reminded himself that he had to give it his all. Finally, he used empathic magic to perform an automatic counterattack. Kaido's body moved on its own, continuously dodging and countering the attacks of the giant bear. He realized that his fingers were broken, but he kept fighting despite feeling his mana slowly depleting. From a distance, Luna and Lilia felt an unsettling sensation as they noticed something unusual from within their chests, like a bad omen. At that very moment, Lind suddenly departed. Kro Noi, the goddess of time, and Shiro, the goddess of creation, also sensed the danger Kaido was in. The fact that Kaido was in danger began spreading across the world through the influence of the world's blessing. Kro Noi asked if it was alright to keep this secret from Kaido, but Shiro reassured her that it was fine, as Kaido would still act the same way regardless. Kaido continued to fight the bear, struggling to keep his weakening body upright. As Kaido was about to collapse from exhaustion, the giant bear prepared for a final decisive blow. But at that moment, Lind appeared and stood in front of him. Lilia, who had just returned, used her sword to slice the monster in two. Lind's father then attempted to heal Kaido with magic, but he realized that his healing magic had been nullified. Suddenly, Light radiated from Kaido's body, and his wounds began to heal. Shiro explained that as long as Kaido kept the magical crystal, no one could kill him, except for one individual. Everyone was confused about what kind of magic this was, but it felt like a miracle. Hina, worried, asked if Kaido was alright, and Lin's father reassured her that he was now safe and no longer in danger. Lilia warned that they couldn't relax. A black bear capable of breaking through magical barriers was present, and it was likely that more monsters were lurking. These particular black bears last appeared 200 years ago and had destroyed half of the spirit forest. Lilia informed everyone that the black bears were being commanded by a special individual, and she urged everyone to hold their ground, protect Kaido and others. Lin and Lilia would provide support, taking the lead in the fight to defend the forest. Those who could fight were summoned immediately. The black armored soldiers also charged into battle. Suddenly, a violent tremor rippled through the area. The air became suffocating, filled with a chilling, deathly aura. Everyone felt a wave of fear as a voice, filled with fury, rang out, declaring that the one who dared to harm Kaido would not be forgiven. Kaido woke up and realized he was lying in a bed. He remembered fighting a giant bear before losing consciousness, but now, there wasn't a single wound on him. Isis entered, her face full of worry. When Kaido asked why she was there, Isis joyfully embraced him, relieved that he had recovered, and asked if he was in any pain. Kaido reassured her that he felt fine. Isis sighed with relief, telling him that she had erased everything that could hurt him. If anything were to happen to him, she wouldn't be able to control herself. Then, she mentioned that she had to leave, as her presence would frighten Lilia and the others if they found out she was there. Kaido called after her, thanking her, saying that while he didn't know all the details, it was clear that Isis was the one who had saved him. He promised that, if he got the chance, he would repay her by taking her out to eat someday. When Kaido stepped outside, Lilia and the others were already there. Lilia, concerned, asked if he was alright. Kaido apologized for worrying everyone. When he asked about the others, Lilia explained that they were still unconscious due to the effects of the curse of death. They couldn't assist, and the soldiers' morale was on the verge of collapsing. Kaido was shocked to hear this and asked why things were so dire. Lilia was surprised that the Death Lord Isis hadn't mentioned anything to Kaido. After Kaido lost consciousness, a horde of giant black bears attacked the forest, but there were no casualties. All the bears were annihilated when Isis appeared in a furious rage, unleashing the curse of death that wiped out everything. However, this also affected everyone around, causing them to panic and fall unconscious. Isis offered to take Kaido back to the inn, and Lilia explained that the soldiers, as well as many tourists and villagers, were affected by the terror from Isis' overwhelming power. Kaido suddenly asked about the hunting expedition, and Lilia informed him that it had been canceled due to the incident with the black bears. The event would be postponed until the following year. Though Kaido felt a little disappointed, he understood that this was not the right time. Out of nowhere, Lilia knelt down and apologized, returning Kuro's ring to Kaido. She explained that because of her, Kaido had faced danger. This ring provided a high level of defense, and if she hadn't borrowed it, Kaido might not have been in such a perilous situation. Kaido replied that he was the one who should apologize because he had failed to keep his promise to protect everyone. He felt that everything that had happened was his fault. Lin was anxious and panicked, unsure of what to do. Lilia, on the other hand, kept apologizing, not knowing how to atone for her mistakes. Kaido, frustrated, playfully flicked her forehead and asked why she kept blaming herself for such trivial things. What had happened was just an accident, and he got hurt because of his own lack of caution, not because of Lilia. Kaido suddenly remembered Linda. She had said many times before that she never hated or resented Lilia. Losing her voice or leaving the Knight's Order hadn't caused her sorrow. The only thing she held dear was the happiness of being able to protect her friend. Linda never intended to heal her voice, and it had nothing to do with Lilia. Linda had once run away while Lilia desperately tried to protect the World Tree. Linda understood that healing her voice would make Lilia feel better, but she had remained silent because beyond that, Linda felt there was nothing more she could do. She had kept her feelings hidden for a long time, but finally realized that this was what created the distance between them. Linda used magic to touch her throat, stating that she could restore her voice. Lilia realized that she was using magic to control her vocal cords and tried to stop her, fearing that Linda would cause further harm to her body. Luna held Lilia back, urging her to listen to Linda. Linda said that she had no regrets, and that this injury was a mark of her pride and honor. Lilia burst into tears and embraced Linda. Luna told Kato that they should give the two some private time, and the two of them left. Luna thanked Kaito for saying what she herself had wanted to say but couldn't. Kaito then asked why Luna didn't stay with them, and she explained that Linda and Lilia needed private time to heal their relationship. When Kaito asked about Luna's real age, she responded that she was 86 years old, but because she was of a different race, her age didn't correspond to human years. Later, the group met Linda's parents, who were continually surprised by Kaito's connections to such powerful individuals. Suddenly, the voice of the goddess Shiro echoed in Kaito's mind, asking if he liked pets. Although Kaito felt it wasn't the right time, Shiro continued to ask, and when Kaito admitted he liked animals, Shiro announced that she would send the pet to his home. Kaito rushed to the door and found a girl, who introduced herself as Anima, saying that she would now be his devoted servant. Shiro explained that Anima was a soul that remained after a battle and had been granted a new body to serve Kaito. Anima revealed that she was the black bear Kaito had fought before, and now she wanted to atone for her actions by dedicating her life to him. Shiro had granted her power equivalent to that of a high-ranking demon. After everything was settled, Kaito returned to his room, and Linda came to invite him for a walk. During their walk, Linda thanked Kaito for giving her the chance to resolve things with Lilia. She also warned him not to be so reckless in the future. Linda said she had no regrets about her injury, but if she couldn't protect Kaito, she would truly regret it. Kaito realized that not only had Linda's voice been harmed, but her entire body had been affected as well. The magic ring suddenly glowed, but Kaito reassured Linda that it was just a prototype, so it was okay if there were any flaws. Linda apologized for damaging the ring, but Kaito just laughed, saying he was glad it was still useful. At the World Foundation, Lilywood inquired about the current status of King Symphonia. A servant reported that everything had stabilized and that the king had requested an opportunity to apologize to Duke Lilia. However, Lilia was currently away on a journey with others, so the king hadn't received a reply yet. Lilywood recalled that she had previously urged the king to send a heartfelt apology accompanied by a grand ceremony to Kaito, and warned that if this wasn't done, she would sever ties with the kingdom. Lilywood believed that after the apology, they could foster a friendship, which would benefit Symphonia, as Kaito had close relationships with both the Dark King and the Death King. If Kaito had a good impression of the kingdom, others would follow suit. Conversely, if Kaito was hostile, the king surely knew the consequences. Lilywood emphasized that the king needed to make a wise decision. Afterward, someone entered to report that the black bears in the spirit forest had been completely eradicated. When Lilywood asked who was responsible, the servant said it was the Death King. It was reported that a man attending the Spirit Tree Festival had been gravely injured, after which the Death King appeared. Lilywood immediately decided to head to the Spirit Forest. Meanwhile, Kaito woke up very early and decided to go for a walk. Anima, Kaito's bodyguard, had been standing watch since 1 a.m. When Kaito asked her if she had anything else to do, Lin's father appeared and requested that Anima cooperate with them, as the recent situation had been quite chaotic. Kaito told Anima to listen to him and join the army, but she would only start working at 7 a.m. While walking together, Kaito asked why Anima wanted to be useful to him. Anima admitted that she admired Kaito, even though he was weaker compared to Lilia or Lind. She explained that she had no mother since she became aware of the world, and had only known two things: enemies or prey. Black bears were strong and lived independently, but Anima wanted to fight for someone she deeply respected. Her battle with Kaito had made her admire his spirit, even though he wasn't fighting for her, but to protect others. Anima explained that her soul had been noticed by the goddess Shiro, who gave her the opportunity to serve Kaito. Anima revealed that she was a special individual, far stronger than the other bears, but serving someone unworthy of respect had been the most humiliating thing for her. Kaito, with his spirit of fighting for others, became the person she admired. Anima reaffirmed her desire to serve and remain loyal to Kaito. Kaito thanked Anima for sharing her story and said that after her work here was done, he would like her to come to Lilia's estate to help during difficult times. Anima happily agreed, and then asked if Lilia was a special human, as her magical strength was clearly on another level. Kaito realized that Lilia was much stronger than he initially thought, and he felt that he hadn't properly thanked her for saving him. While wandering, Kaito recalled the fruit from the World Tree. Lost in thought, he accidentally bumped into a female elf. After a while, Kaido returned to the mansion, where Aoi and Hina expressed their concern for him. Hina apologized for being unable to move when in danger, but Kaido reassured her that she wasn't to blame. They were relieved that everyone was safe, and Hina, unable to hide her admiration, thanked Kaido for saving her. Kaido felt inspired by everyone's praise. The great harvest was still ongoing, and the spirits were eager to preserve the Spirit Tree Festival, a time when the spirit's fruits ripen exclusively during this period. Lin's mother explained that befriending the spirits during this festival was crucial, because without harvesting alongside the spirits, the fruit's quality would decline. She advised Kaido that if he performed well during the event, he might even become a spirit master. When the spirits gifted Kaido a fruit, everyone was amazed, as it symbolized a deep connection with the spirits. Lin's mother explained that it took her 20 years to achieve this, while Kaido managed it on his first try. As the festival drew near, Luna cheerfully placed bets on Kaido, which made him feel pressured by everyone's expectations. In the forest, Kaido attracted a large number of spirits and ended up collecting around 300 fruits. During lunch, Kaido enjoyed the meal prepared by Lin, which reminded him of his mother. When the spirits appeared and he shared cookies with them, they suddenly pulled him in a mysterious direction. Kaido followed and soon discovered a girl beneath a large tree. The girl's lower body was fused with the tree, and her hair resembled leaves. Although Kaido didn't know who she was, the girl recognized him and asked if he was Kaido. Surprised that she knew his name, Kaido asked for her identity. The girl introduced herself as Lilywood, the Heavenly Earth King. She told Kaido he didn't need to use honorifics with her, and could just call her by name like he did with Isis and Kuro. Kaido realized that Lilywood was one of the 6 kings. Lilywood shared that she had heard a lot about Kaido from Isis and Kuro, and she hadn't expected them to meet here. She had planned to meet Kaido after the festival to discuss Isis and herself. Lilywood wanted to express her gratitude to Kaido for what he had done for Isis. Curious, Kaido asked her about the situation with Isis. Lilywood confirmed and explained that she and Isis were close friends, but she always felt powerless, unable to help Isis. Lilywood shared that Isis had longed to find someone who could accept her without regard to her power, something Lilywood herself couldn't offer. She could only watch as Isis grew lonelier and sadder. Smiling, Lilywood said that Kaido had broken through that cold barrier, allowing Isis to smile happily again. Every time she met Kaido, Isis smiled sincerely, something Lilywood had never seen before. Lilywood expressed her deep gratitude, saying she didn't know how to thank Kaido enough. She told Kaido that if he ever needed anything within her power, she would gladly help. Kaido hesitated, thinking about asking for a fruit from the World Tree. Though uncomfortable asking for such a precious item, he feared that if he missed the chance, he would deeply regret it. After some consideration, Kaido confessed that Isis was an important friend to him, and that talking with her brought him joy. He didn't feel deserving of a reward from Lilywood, but he wanted to request a fruit from the World Tree for a personal reason. Lilywood understood Kaido's request and agreed to give him a fruit from the World Tree without hesitation. This surprised Kaido because everything seemed to happen so easily. Lilywood explained that although the fruit had the ability to heal any wound, it wasn't omnipotent and didn't hold great value for her. She only restricted its distribution to prevent its misuse. A branch extended, and the fruit of the World Tree appeared. Kaido took the fruit, smiling and thanking Lilywood. Lilywood also warned Kaido about the faceless Phantom King, who doesn't allow anyone to endanger the world's peace, not even someone from another world. The Phantom King might be watching Kaido, assessing whether he poses a threat. Lilywood reminded Kaido that if anything unusual happened, he should call on her, and she would always be there to help. Even though Kuro was by Kaido's side to protect him, Lilywood cautioned that the Phantom King was one of the 6 kings, and other kings like the War King and the Dragon King were also keeping an eye on Kaido, the otherworlder who had built relationships with the Supreme Gods.